Welcome everybody back to the Three-Man Rush podcast. As you know, today is a special episode, like all the other special episodes, but this was an extra special episode because the draft is over. It's finally done. All that work, all those podcasts we did leading up to the draft culminates in this video right here. We're not going to mention how accurate we were on the mock draft this year. We're going to go ahead and throw that shit out the window. We'll delete them off YouTube. They never happened.
Yeah, delete the VOD.
Yeah, as good as we were last year, we were equally as bad this year. But that seems to be a recurring theme. When I'm going through and checking how accurate most of the mock drafts were, nobody's mock draft was good this year. Nobody was safe.
Nah.
But if you didn't know, I'm your host Landon Oliver here with my co-host Andrew Scott. We are missing Big Jared Holly. He's tending to some stuff tonight, but he will be back on the next episode, especially once fantasy stuff ramps up. I know he's excited to get back into fantasy football. But today's episode, like I said, it is very special because we now give you our official Three-Man Rush podcast draft grades. Don't get it twisted. Nobody likes draft grades. You can't sit and like tell me this, this team did this team did this, because we don't know yet. Nobody knows yet how these guys are going to perform on the field. Usually you won't even know next year. You won't even know the year after. Usually it's about a 3-year process before if you really know if you had a really good draft or not. But hey, we're in the business of clicks. We're in the business of entertainment. Draft grades are entertaining and they get clicks. So hence here we are. Plus there's some shit that happened in the draft too. There was some shit that went down.
Yeah.
And you already know, like the Colts, for example, the Colts didn't have a first round draft pick. I had a great first round. Bro.
Yeah, Rams didn't have one either, but I had a blast watching that thing.
Dude, I loved it. Like it was fun, but just for like as a Colts fan, it was extra fun. I loved it.
Right.
Which we'll get into here in a minute. But yeah, we're so excited. If you are watching on YouTube and you are not subscribed, please click that subscribe button down at the bottom there next to the bell notification as well. That way you can be notified whenever we drop new content, new videos, new shorts, all that good stuff. If you are listening on a podcast format, go ahead and click the subscribe button. We are on Amazon. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple. We're on everywhere you can get podcasts. I think Google Podcasts, if they have, I don't know what all podcasts, wherever you get podcasts, we're on it. So go ahead and click that subscribe button as well. Thank you guys so much for the support. Let's go ahead, get into this. We're going to go in alphabetical order here.
Hey, real quick, okay. before we get into it.
Yeah, let's drop this.
I got a real quick shout out, real quick plug. As of us recording this, it's still about 2.5 hours away, but we are approaching, by the time this hits YouTube, it will be my beautiful wife's 30th birthday. So just quick shout out to her. It's been almost a full decade of celebrating her birthday with her. And she's finally joining me in the 30s. She can no longer give me shit about being a 30-year-old, even though she swears she's going to be 29 forever. Either that or she's going to wake up and her life be over, one or the other.
29 plus 1.
Yeah, exactly. But got to give a quick shout out to her. Best thing that's ever happened to me.
Happy birthday, Stephanie. So. Hey. Let's get a round of applause.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Steph.
Yeah, so I had to get that in there, man. Tomorrow's a special day.
Welcome to the 30s club. Hey, it only gets better. That's
right.
Better.
That's right. That's what I told her.
So,
but now let's and like you said, if we wanted to do this the accurate way, we should probably be doing like the 2019 NFL draft grades, because like you said, you need about like 3 years to really be able to evaluate it. But look, we went through the process. We did 3 mock drafts. The NFL draft happened. The next logical thing that makes complete sense that we are surely not going to get wrong, just like we didn't get the mock draft wrong, is we're going to grade these classes before they even show up to minicamp. We're going to go ahead and give them a grade. So, but similar to the mock drafts, though, it'll be fun 2 years, 3 years from now to look back on this video and see, where we were right, where we were wrong. So let's get into it.
Disclaimer too. I am a notoriously tough grader. Like if I was your teacher, you would fucking hate me. You would not like me as a teacher. So yeah, don't be alarmed. Like, for example, a C, the way that I've grown up and understood it, a C is average. Look, C's get degrees. So if you get a C in this draft, don't think I hate your draft. I think you had an average draft. That doesn't mean you had a bad draft. Doesn't mean you had a good draft. I mean, you had an average draft.
I got a whole ass college degree with that line of thinking. So
hey, baby, C's get degrees. That's what they say. Yeah, give me. So yeah, if you're listening to this and you're like, man, this motherfucker gave us a C. He doesn't even know he's talking. Doesn't mean I didn't like your draft. That just means I thought you had an average draft, which
Ain't
it is
nothing
what
wrong
it
with the
is.
average.
No, yeah. So I mean, like I said, there's like a very it's hard to get an A. Like it's hard, especially considering we don't know what happened. So yeah, Andrew might be a little more lenient than I am. Y'all might enjoy him a little bit more in this episode, but without further ado, let's start with the A's. We started with the Arizona Cardinals. So we are going in alphabetical order. They will be listed down below. If you see your team, go ahead, click.
Yeah. That's an important point before we get into all this. In the description, if you're on YouTube, in the description of the video, there's going to be timestamps or chapters with each team to where you can just, if you don't want to listen to the whole thing, if you're not, a psychopath that wants to hear our breakdown of every single team's draft, skip to your team's draft and give it a listen and then drop down in the comments and let us know how stupid we are.
Yeah, but look, if you are a psychopath, we appreciate you even more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We love our psychopaths on this show. All right, so Arizona Cardinals. So obviously, first big move right off the bat. First round pick, gone. Hollywood Brown in. They followed that up, so they trade their first for Marquise Brown from the Ravens. Follow that up with Trey McBride, Cameron Thomas, Majai Sanders, Keontae Ingram, Lacita Smith, Christian Matthew, Jesse Luketa, who I really like, and Marquise Hayes. So still had a pretty decent amount of picks, but they did get Marquise Brown. Obviously now that looks like it was a move leading up to the DeAndre Hopkins suspension. He was,
it's going to be even more important now.
Yeah, whatever steroids that dude was using, he needs to get a new dealer because you were way too skinny to be on steroids. And not only that, you had your most injured season while on steroids. At least when Will Fuller took steroids, he played the whole year. So
yeah, and honestly, I mean, all jokes aside, I wouldn't be surprised if it was like some substance that he was trying to use to recover from his injury, and then gets hit with the banned substance, and now he's out. But I don't.
Nowadays, you never know. Look, yeah. I'm all like, we won't get into the steroid thing, but just let you know, I'm kind of about it. Like, I want my athletes. I want my athletes roided out.
Look, if you're a baseball fan, there was nobody mad in 1998 whenever Big Mac and Sosa was hitting all them home runs.
The bigger, faster, stronger these athletes are, the better the games are. So yeah, you can pump every sport full of steroids, and I would be a fan. So that being said, let's get into the Cardinals draft. So what did you like? What are some questionable picks? And did you like the Marquise Brown trade? Because we saw Marquise Brown go for 22 when apparently just a few picks more than that, you can get a guy like AJ Brown.
Arizona does also have AJ Green.
They do have AJ Green. That's what I was thinking.
I mean, I like the Hollywood trade. He does. I think he has 2 years left of pretty manageable salary before they would have to consider paying him. And I mean, Kyler Murray does have a great deep ball, and they have the college connection as well, playing at Oklahoma together. So I do think it's a great fit from that aspect. And price-wise, what they gave up, I don't think was bad either. So that I didn't mind. I mean, if I have to trade for it and know I'm going to have to pay one of Hollywood or AJ Brown, I'm definitely preferring to pay AJ Brown. But they did buy themselves some time. With Hollywood having a couple of years under control. So I like that for them, especially now that they're going to be without Hopkins for 6 games unless he gets that reduced at all. Outside of that, Trey McBride, he was my favorite tight end coming into this draft. Zach Ertz is not getting any younger. So, by the time, it usually takes tight ends about 3 years to really hit their stride. So by the time McBride is really starting to come into his own, Zach Ertz should be out of the picture. So I really like the transition that they could have in place there. Smith, the guard from Virginia Tech, I thought that was a pretty good value pick in the 6th round. He was, picked in the 200s. And I think that's a guy that they might be able to just plug and play on that offensive line. So I did like that one. There was another guy that I like, but I heard you kind of lean into that as you were reading off the pick. So I'll leave that one for you to break down. But that was kind of my biggest takeaways. I mean, I loved, I'm a Rams fan. So if you can trade a pick for a proven player, and I do consider Hollywood to be that, I'm all about that. And then I really like McBride quite a bit too. I like what they did with their second round pick as well. So it, I didn't think it was like I wasn't blown away by the draft class, but I think it was solid, especially for Steve Keim, who, historically here lately has not been that great with his draft classes. So I thought this was decent.
Yeah. Um, so my only issues is one, they waited until 2:15 to grab an offensive lineman, which I thought that was clearly one of the bigger needs on their team.
Right.
Um, so I didn't necessarily agree with that strategy, and especially considering, you know, obviously at the time we didn't know Hopkins was going to be suspended, but they just picked Rondale Moore last year. They still have AJ Green. They did lose Christian Kirk, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I thought they had a pretty decent wide receiver rotation. So um, I just thought there were some guys that you probably could have parlayed a better value into than Hollywood Brown. Because I'm not the biggest Hollywood Brown fan, but I do think if there was a team that would be the best fit for him, it would have easily been the Cardinals.
Yeah.
Definitely more so than the Ravens, just because, like you said, the Kingsbury offense, and then his connection with Kyler Murray. I think this was more of an appease Kyler Murray move necessarily than it was like, let's make our football team unstoppable. Because I thought their offense was good, but their defense still has some big question marks for me. Cameron Thomas, pick 87. I had a 4th round grade on him, so he went a little bit earlier for me than I would have expected. But they did follow that up with Jesse Luketa at a Penn State with 256 overall. I thought that dude would have went a lot earlier than that. So I thought that was a really good move for them. I do really like Trey McBride also. He's kind of similar as like that move tight end as Zach Ertz. Not really much of a blocker, but he's going to be a pass catcher. And then Keontae Ingram out of USC. I thought that was a pretty decent pick in the 200s. That's generally where I want to get my running backs. So I didn't hate that move either. Overall, I think, with the Hollywood Brown trade, I didn't necessarily agree like it was the most pressing issue on the team. And to give up a 1st round pick for that, but I can understand why they did it. Especially right now with all the Kyler Murray stuff and all the rumors this offseason. If that guy is truly your franchise quarterback, you want to do everything you can to keep that guy happy. So, I mean, I get their thinking behind the move, but not necessarily the route that I would have taken. I probably would have tried to load up on offensive line and defense more than I would have just tried to keep adding weapons and weapons and weapons. But you never know, because we saw that worked out for Joe Burrow and the Bengals. So, I mean, they didn't get the offensive lineman, and granted, he did get killed a lot last season, but
Yeah.
but I mean, they made it to the Super Bowl because their weapons were just so dynamic all over that offense. So let's go ahead and give our grades. Me personally, I'm going to give it a C plus.
Okay. I was gonna go, and honestly, listening to you talk there, that sounded like I liked it more than you, but I kind of had C in my head, so I'm
Yeah.
okay with, to come to a consensus, I'm okay with C plus. That's good with me.
Yeah, because I mean, it was average, but it was on the better end of average, just because
Yeah.
they
Yeah, that's
did get
fair
a
thinking.
proven player
Right.
in Hollywood Brown. So anytime you can get a proven player over a rookie that you don't know about, I'm always going to go for that. So yeah, but the rest of the picks I thought were average. I did think they got really good value on day 3 with a lot of their picks, so that also bumped it up a little bit. So yeah, I think it was an average draft, but I think it was on the better end of average. So if you're a Cardinals fan, I don't think you should be disappointed at all.
No.
So I mean, let's move on now. Staying in the A's here next with the Atlanta Falcons, who started off with a bang. First wide receiver taken, Drew's boy. I know he's hyped for this, and that is Drake London. They followed that up with a guy that I thought would go at the end of the 1st round.
Yeah, me
Got him
too.
kind of towards the beginning of the 2nd round, and Arnold Ebiketie. Followed that up with linebacker Troy Anderson, another guy I really liked. Then, of course, obviously, our boy Desmond Ritter goes.
Yeah.
If you listen to the show, you know how much we like Desmond Ritter. Got my boy, fellow WKU alum, stand up, let's go Toppers, D'Angelo Malone at pick 82. And then, running back Tyler Algier I don't know how you would pronounce that, out of BYU, number 151 overall. Good value for a running back, picking in the 150s. That's how we want to do it on this podcast. Then they, finally got offensive guard Justin Schaefer and tight end John Fitzpatrick, both Georgia players.
Not a bad team to pluck day 3 guys from.
No, not at all. So obviously a new regime there in Atlanta. They're kind of, getting things on the ground. Clearly they're in rebuild mode. And clearly they had a big wide receiver need, obviously, with Calvin Ridley, go ahead, dropping FanDuel bets and all that shit.
Right.
They lost Julio last year. So I think wide receiver was a big need. Pairing a guy like Drake London with Kyle Pitts for the foreseeable future, that's money. And then they were able to get a really good pass rusher, I thought, Arnold Epiketti. And I do like Troy Anderson. I like Desmond Ridder. So I think their day 1 and day 2, I think they absolutely killed it. Day 3, there's some question marks there. I still think offensive line is a huge need for that team. And they didn't really address that until pick 190, which, I know, once this wasn't a very deep tackle class, but there were the inside offensive line is kind of where the meat of this offensive line class was. So I think Schaefer, you can get an SEC guard out of Georgia. He might, be a good rotational guy, but I still don't see a starter on there. But I'm excited, Desmond Ridder, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Hopefully we see that be the future trio for quarterback and weapons in Atlanta. I'm sure that's what they're hoping for. And I couldn't think of a better guy to mentor a guy like Desmond Ridder than Marcus Mariota, who's a guy that a lot of people have compared him to. And as we saw with Ryan Tannehill, and actually kind of unlike Ryan Tannehill, which we'll get into that, Marcus Mariota was willing to mentor Ryan Tannehill and be his cheerleader, root for him.
He's very open to that role. He's done it a few times.
Yeah, and he even said, I think he said in the offseason that he would definitely be willing to mentor a rookie that's coming into that situation. That's something he's very open to. So I couldn't think of a better mentor for a guy like Desmond Ridder, other than like Tom Brady or like Aaron,
an established guy.
Yeah, like star guy that you can watch day in and day out. But
right,
I think he's going to be able to learn a lot from Marcus Mariota. So pass the ball to you.
Yeah, obviously, man, I was a huge fan of this class. Drake London was wide receiver 1 for me. Desmond Ridder was quarterback 1. Now with the caveat that there wasn't really a quarterback that I was in love with this class as being like a humongous difference maker, a clear-cut one. But Ridder was the guy that I landed on as my favorite. So to be able to get him in the 3rd round and not have to, what I loved about it is they didn't reach. They let it fall to them. They were able to get a couple impact defensive players. I love Arnold Epiketti. Like you, I thought that he would go in the 1st. To be able to grab him in the 2nd. Troy Anderson, I think, is a great fit as well. Being able to grab those 2 guys and then address the quarterback. And right before Matt Corral and Malik Willis go off, they kind of, instead of being reactive to a quarterback run, they were kind of able to start that and grab their guy. So I love the approach they took in that aspect, not trying to, reach and grab a guy. They were able to let the board fall to them, grab a couple impact defensive players in between Drake London and the quarterback pick. I love that. I do think Tyler Algier, the running back from BYU, I think that he'll be a good fit for that offense as well. He kind of reminds, I guess, the easy, lazy comparisons, like kind of like a James Conner. He'll be a good thumper for that offense. They just cut Mike Davis. I think there's a pretty good chance he slots in from day 1 and is their early down back. Obviously they still got Cordell Patterson there as well, but I think he'll be more of the hybrid player he typically is. And I think Tyler Algier will fit perfectly into that early down role and be a great goal line option for him as well. So, overall, I think they hit a home run on day 1 and day 2, and then they sprinkled in a little bit there in day 3. But top to bottom, I like this class quite a bit.
Yeah. So let's go. Let's give our grades. Where you got them at?
I'm gonna give them a B+. It's not quite an A for me, but they're like right on, like B+, A- type of area for me.
See, for me, I think it's a B, just a solid B. Because I thought their first 4 picks, they knocked it out of the park with, but their last 4 picks, there's a lot of question marks there. So You get an A for the first four. You kind
Right.
of get around like a C minus D for the last four. And you combine those, I think it's a solid B, because they have potential to get some really great impact stars. Now, obviously, Desmond Ridder becomes a franchise quarterback, ends up being one of the better quarterbacks in the league, that you automatically get an A. Like anytime you can find that franchise guy, you get an A.
Yeah.
Especially in the third round. But there's not been a very long list of successful third round quarterbacks, especially here recently. I think if you look at the list, the last 9 third round cornerbacks taken, I'll read off the list because this will preface, because a lot of these quarterbacks went in like that third, fourth area. The only one that we had picked in the first round was Kenny Pickett. I'll read a list off of the last 9 quarterbacks selected in the third round: Kellen Mond, Davis Mills, Will Greer, Mason Rudolph, Davis Webb, CJ Beathard, Garrett Grayson, Sean Mannion, and Mike Glennon.
Not great, Cotton.
Nah, not great. So the hit rate is almost non-existent. Because for every Russell Wilson you have, you've got
9 of those guys.
Yeah, a lot more than 9, but you got tons of those guys.
Yeah.
But we both love Desmond Ridder on this show. So we wish
definitely
all the
rooting for
success.
him. He's an easy guy to root for.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's got the right mindset to succeed. So solid B. So now let's move on now. Up next, we have the Baltimore Ravens, who just continually, for whatever reason, let the board fall to them, and the board always falls in their favor. So they somehow just continually get guys that fit almost perfectly there. So obviously we'll start off with the big ones. Kyle Hamilton at safety drops them, number 14. Tyler Linderbaum, number 25. David Ajabo, number 45. Defensive tackle Travis Jones out of UConn, 76. Daniel Falaleli, huge motherfucker. At pick number 110. Jalen Amore Davis at 119. Charlie Kohler, awesome. Tight end out of Iowa State at 128. Punter. We got a punter. And Jordan Stout, who I thought was a really good punter, definitely a draftable punter, so I don't see a problem with that. Isaiah Likely at number 139, another tight end we both really like on the show. DeMarion Williams at cornerback, and then Tyler Beatty at running back. So obviously they're going to get a running back. It's the Baltimore Ravens.
You got to get one.
Yeah, so man, this is a team that I would say won the draft. Them and maybe like 2 other teams, like maybe 1 or 2 other.
They're on the short list for sure.
I thought they absolutely killed it. Now there is, there's question marks with Kyle Hamilton as far as like his speed in shorts. There's no question marks on Kyle Hamilton when you turn on the game film. So I thought he was one of the 5 best players in the draft. They got him at pick 14. So obviously that's awesome. David Ajabo, probably going to be a top 10, top 15 pick, injures his Achilles. They get him all the way down at 45. Tyler Linderbaum, first round, one of probably the best offensive line or inside offensive line player in the draft.
Yeah.
I thought he was the top 15 talent as well. They get him at 25. Travis Jones, I thought he was a second round talent. They got him at 76.
He was one of those guys that there were whispers about him possibly sneaking in as a first round, like right leading up to the draft as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, Charlie Kohler, I really liked. Isaiah Likely. I loved Isaiah Likely in this draft class as well. I thought he was like firmly in that like 3rd, 4th tight end, best tight end in the class.
Yep.
And then, they got, to me, I know like there's talk about, the punt god Ariaza being the best punter in the class.
Yeah, right.
I think Stout has just as good of a chance to be an impact punter in the league as anybody. That guy's hang time is ridiculous. And that's a big thing in the NFL. It's not necessarily accurate. I mean, obviously you want accuracy, you want leg strength, but hang time is a big deal for punters in the NFL because you got to have these guys be able to get down the field. He's got massive hang time on his balls. So But yeah, dude, I know that's like a weird statement.
I
Massive.
just love that we're
His
breaking
balls
down.
are
I
big.
just love that we're
Yeah.
breaking down punters and their balls hang
Yeah.
time right now. That's the type of content you get on this show. We leave no stone
Bro,
unturned.
yeah. If that doesn't show you how obsessed we are with this shit, man, I don't know. I scouted punters in this shit. So something's wrong with me. That being said, I'm gonna pass the ball over to you. I'm gonna punt the ball over to you.
Nice.
Give you that punt, and I'll let you do with it what you will.
Yeah, that's a professional transition right there. I mean, for me, not to belittle what they did in the later rounds, because I mean, it's remarkable that they had like 6 fourth-round picks and held on to all of them. I was positive they were going to try to package some and move or something like that. They used all of them. But for me, this class is all about the first 4 picks. Kyle Hamilton, Tyler Linderbaum, David Ojabo, Travis Jones. Like, man, to have 4 picks in the top 3 rounds and come away with those guys, it's
the most Ravens players in the draft.
Yeah, dude. Like, Kyle Hamilton is such a stud. I don't get the combine concerns. Like, you just turn on any game and those concerns should be alleviated. Tyler Linderbaum, I heard some stuff about how he might not fit in the Ravens blocking schemes and blah 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 blah. The dude's too good. He will figure it out. The Ravens will figure it out. Like, no concerns.
You could always
there.
get a guy in the weight room.
Yeah, no concerns there whatsoever. David Ojabo, once he, I mean, the jury's still out on Achilles injuries. We'll see, but I think he was well worth a gamble at 45. And then once you put him on the other side of Odafe Oweh, once he does get healthy, I mean, that's dangerous. And then you put Travis Jones, who very well he should have been a 2nd-round pick in my opinion.
Yes, agree.
You get him at pick 76, like. You put him in the interior, man, that is a home run of 4 picks. And then, Isaiah Likely, the second of the 2 tight ends they drafted, I liked him more than the kid from Iowa State personally.
Yeah, I did too.
So I love this class, man. And then Tyler Batty, he's more of like a pass catching type back, I think is what he'll translate to in the NFL. He handled a bigger role than that Missouri, but I just don't think he has the size to handle the type of role in college that, in the NFL. I don't think he'll be able to replicate that. But now we're nitpicking at their 6th-round pick, their last pick of the draft. But yeah, for me, it was all about those top 4 picks, man. I thought that they absolutely crushed it. And, spoiler alert, just like pretty much any other year, this team operates different than pretty much any other team in the league whenever it comes to draft time. And I'm giving them an A this year, and I can probably go ahead and pencil in an A for the 2023 draft and not even really be that nervous about it. Like, these guys just do it year after year. And they did it again this year, and they definitely get an A from me.
Yeah, agreed. This is one of 3 teams I gave an A to. So yeah, they get an A, as they somehow generally always do. And yeah, it's just one of the best drafting teams of football, if not the best drafting team. So now let's move on down the B's. Let's go to Buffalo and the Bills here. Obviously, one of the very few teams that had very few holes on the roster. They didn't have a lot of holes to fill. So they were able to just take best player available. I thought they did that a lot of the time. Obviously, get one of Drew's favorite corners in the draft, Kaiir Elam. Got him at 23. James Cook, running back out of Georgia, at 63. Terrell Bernard at 89. Khalil Shakir, who I thought should have went way earlier than 148. Matt Ariata, the punt god, as we were just talking about. We can break down some punters again on this one. Christian Benford at 185. Luke Tenuta at 209. And Balin Spector, Clemson linebacker, at 231. So yeah, let's keep the ball rolling here with you. What do you think of the Bills draft?
Yeah, I love what they did right away to plug what I thought was the only need they really had on defense was, to have a cornerback opposite Tre'Davious White. And I think Kaiir Elam is a great fit for that. I love the player. He was the clear next guy up for me, after the quote unquote big 3 at the cornerback position. I thought he was, I came away from the process liking him more than Andrew Booth Jr. personally, who I felt like he was kind of going back and forth with for that spot. James Cook, I don't think he could have dreamed up a better landing spot because they do not seem to care about size at the running back position. I mean, they're quote unquote lead back. Last year with Devin Singletary isn't the biggest guy either. So I think that he landed in a good spot there to where his skill set will be used. It'll get maximized more than maybe anywhere else. But my favorite pick probably this entire class outside of Elam was Khalil Shakir out of Boise State, the wide receiver who somehow lasted to pick 148. And
fifth round.
Yeah, that's wild to me. So being able to grab him and plug him in, I think he'll fit in perfect with like the Cole Beasley role that they had there.
Oh, dude, yeah.
And make this offense even more dangerous than it already was. So I thought that was an incredible value pick. And I thought with the picks that they had and the limited holes that they had, I thought they did a great job plugging in some of those.
Yeah, I agree. Khalil Shakir was a guy that I thought would sneak into the back of the second round. So to get him in the fifth round, that's great value. James Cook, like you said, really good fit for what that offense wants to do. Josh Allen's their running back. I mean, he runs the ball more than any running back, but James Cook is a guy that could step in right away, be a fantastic pass catcher, game breaker in that offense. It's kind of like a pick your poison thing now between James Cook and Shakir with what that offense already did. And then Kyer Elam, you said it perfectly. There's really only a few holes. One of those holes was the second cornerback, and they filled that with what was a lot of people's third, fourth best cornerback in the draft. Obviously behind the big two there in Sauce Gardner and Stingley. This was just a really good draft. It was a solid draft. I don't think it was like a hit it out of the park draft because I think some of their later picks, they could have got better value on. But I think, their first few picks, they really nailed. So for me, I'm going to give them another solid B. I think this was an above average class for them, but it's not a hit it out of the draft, class like Baltimore's was. But it's still a really good draft for them.
Yeah, B was what I landed on as well.
All right, so let's move on down the line. Going into the C's now, Carolina Panthers. They didn't really have a ton of picks. I believe they had 6 picks in the draft, but they did end up taking the tackle when in Ike Ekwonu. They're at Ole Miss. They did get their quarterback at 94 in Matt Corral. Then Brandon Smith out of Penn State, I thought was a really good linebacker. Amari Barno, pass rusher out of Virginia Tech, 189, guy that I thought would have went earlier than that. Kalen Barnes out of Baylor, and Cade Mays out of the guard out of Tennessee, both later on picks for them as well.
Yeah.
So they, like most every team, they played this quarterback market pretty much exactly how they should have when it comes to the draft. And they didn't reach for any of these guys. They got Matt Corral, who a lot of people think has the talent to be the best quarterback in this class. I'm not as high on him as some people, but I do think he has some really good tools to work there or to work with. I really like Ike Ekwonu. They really needed help at that tackle spot. Whether he's a left tackle, right tackle, it doesn't matter. They got a really good tackle, and they needed a really good tackle. I did like Brandon Smith, and I liked Amari Barno. I thought those were good value picks where they got him at. And I liked Kalen Barnes as well at 242 overall. That was a guy that if he didn't get drafted was like one of my priority free agents, but I thought he had a pretty good chance of getting drafted, and he did kind of sneak in there late in the 7th round. So this was I thought this was a really solid draft for them as well. They hit on a lot of team needs, but they didn't really have a lot of draft picks to sit there and load up with. So,
right.
So what are you thinking?
Yeah, that was the trouble I had with this team coming into this draft is they have so many needs, but yeah, because of prior trades that really kind of screwed them a little bit. They didn't have much draft capital to play with. Now, I loved Ike Ekwonu, getting him at 6. They were one of the most offensive line needy teams in the league. Being able to grab him, I think that's a great pick. Brandon Smith, I mean, his testing numbers alone were worthy of somebody grabbing him and taking a shot at him. From what I've read about him, he was considered more of a project, but with the testing numbers that he put out there, it's well worth the gamble. The thing for me will be, Sam Darnold has shown us enough now that he's clearly not the guy. So I would expect Matt Corral to get some reps pretty early in the NFL in his rookie year. And I think Matt Rule's job will be dependent on, can he put him in a position to succeed similar to what he was in college. It's the whole make your scheme fit the player. Don't try to make the player fit the scheme, because I mean, Matt Corral, whenever he was in college, the RPOs, the simple reads, the quick, accurate throws, and honestly, I think they have receivers that can make that work too, to where combined with obviously Christian McCaffrey, like I think they have the playmakers in place and the lack of offensive line to where they're going to need to get the ball out quickly, to where if Matt Rule can set this offense around what Matt Corral did well in college, I think the pick could work. But to be determined on if that happens or not. But it wasn't. It just a team that's in this bad a shape. I would have liked them to have set themselves up with a little bit more draft capital, but I didn't think they did bad with what they had, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was just, to me, kind of like an average draft. Maybe slightly below, just because we don't, like I said, I wasn't as high on Matt Corral as a lot of people, but obviously, like I said earlier, if he ends up becoming that franchise guy for them, they just get an A automatically, because you found a franchise quarterback in, one of the later picks. So we'll see how that turns out. But for me, I'm gonna give this one a C minus.
Yeah, no, I was at a C, so not far off from you.
Yeah, because I mean, I do think it was in the average range, but it was on like the kind of the back end of average. So now let's move on here to the Chicago Bears. Did not have a first round pick because they do have Justin Fields, but they did have a lot of picks that they could kind of throw some stuff at. Kyler Gordon, cornerback, was their first pick in the second round. Then they followed that up with Jaquan Brisker, the safety out of Penn State. So solidifying that secondary there. Velus Jones out of Tennessee went 71. Then Braxton Jones, Dominique Robinson, Zach Thomas, Tristan Ebner, Doug Kramer, Jatir Carter, Elijah Hicks, and Trenton Gill, the punter out of NC State, finished up their draft there in the 7th round. This was tough for me because I liked Kyler Gordon and I like Jaquan Brisker. I do like both those players.
I agree.
But they really need to get Justin Fields weapons and offensive linemen. Now, they did draft a lot of offensive linemen. I will give them that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how many did they draft? There 1, 2, 3, 4. So they drafted 4 offensive linemen.
But the first one didn't come till day 3, though.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just thought there was better value on the board there for them. Like, they had a guy like Bernard Raymond available. Maybe some of the other inside offensive linemen there that they could have picked. And I mean, they kind of just threw, darts at a dartboard when it comes to the offensive line, and they're hoping that one of them becomes a bullseye. And it very well could, but I thought loading up on defense whenever right now, you have a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract, you need to do everything in your power to maximize him while he's still cheap.
Yeah.
You do that with early offensive line picks, because as we know, man, like there's not a lot of high-end offensive linemen that come on day 3. I think there's not. Velus Jones, he's a guy, like, does he have some value? Yeah, but he's 25. So he's obviously a little bit older for a wide receiver coming out of the draft, and you don't know how well that's going to translate. He's got some speed, but he was a 3rd round, 4th round guy for me. I think comfortably for me, it would have been the 4th round. So, I mean, I thought there was better value on the board than what they got, especially with the number of picks that they have. So yeah, this is, I'll just, anything you want to add?
Mostly just that I agree. Like I really like Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker as players, but I don't like this draft for the Bears at all. I mean, Justin Fields needs to be set up for success, and they let Allen Robinson walk. They didn't address wide receiver until pick 71, and they did that with a receiver that took 6 years to break out in college. Whenever typically you would like to see him break out by like year 2, hopefully, year 3 at the latest, and it took him double that to break out. I feel like this time next year, there's going to be a lot of noise of Justin Field, the bust, and it's not going to be his fault either. I just don't feel like this franchise is setting him up for success. Whereas, like we'll talk about the Jets in a little while and Zach Wilson, they're doing the complete opposite.
Right.
Fields just really is not being given a fair shake here. So that's the only disappointing thing for me. It's not that they didn't get good players in the draft, but I mean, as we all know, the quarterback position is the most important position on the field, and they're really not doing a lot to help him out right now. So, I don't know, of all the offensive linemen, from what I've read, Braxton Jones was pretty impressive. That was the first one that they took in round 5. So maybe that helps their offensive line, but I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know enough about the day 3 offensive linemen to, other than what I've read from other people that are much more in depth with the draft than I am. I'm kind of leaning on their expertise at, once we get to day 3. I'm pretty comfortable day 1 and day 2, but day 3, other than a few guys that I really like, I really lean toward other people that I trust, and I've read some good things about Braxton Jones, but I feel bad for Justin Fields because I liked him quite a bit coming out of college, and I feel like his career is going to take a turn for the worse, and it's not really going to be his fault.
I agree, which is why I'm going to go ahead and give this draft a D. I'm putting it in the D category.
Yeah, I was in the C minus. Just giving them the benefit of the doubt that I did like the first 2 players that they grabbed quite a bit, but it was not necessarily their team needs. But yeah, I didn't feel great about it either.
All right, so now let's move on here. We have the Cincinnati Bengals coming up with Daxton Hill at 31 overall. It's Cam Taylor-Britt, Nebraska cornerback at 60. Zachary Carter, Cordell Volson, Tyson Anderson, who I liked, the Toledo safety, and Jeffrey Gunter at 252, a guy that I thought would go a lot earlier than 252. So for me, this one, they didn't take an offensive lineman until 136, especially at 31 overall. But I don't necessarily know if there was a lineman at 31 that
No, I don't think
you'd
so.
be comfortable spending that pick on. I do like Daxton Hill. Obviously, him and Jesse Bates could form a really dynamic safety room. If he does end up hitting, you're probably looking at one of the top 5 safety rooms in football. And I did like Cam Taylor-Britt as well. They needed a cornerback there. Zach Carter, I'm not super high on, but I do like Tyson Anderson. I like that. I like Jeffrey Gunter at edge too. Like I said, I thought that was a guy that should have went earlier on in day 3. He lasted all the way to 252. So yeah, I mean, they had a really strong day 3. I thought their, day 1 was, I mean, Daxton Hill's a good player.
Mm-hmm.
But there were some other guys on the board I would have kind of liked them to take a shot at, but day 2 just kind of had some question marks for me. So I mean, what are you thinking here on Cincinnati?
Sounds like I might be a little bit higher on Cincy than you. I love the Daxton Hill pick personally, and just the investment in the secondary. Between him, Cam Taylor-Britt, and Tyson Anderson. As far as the offense goes, they with the work they did to shore up the offensive line, there was only really one guard spot that I'm really worried about, and the interior offensive linemen that I thought were worthy of a first round pick, being Zion Johnson, Kenyon Green, and Tyler Linderbaum. They were all off the board at that point. So, I thought they were right in not going that direction. And so Daxton Hill, I thought, was a great pick at the end of the first round. Cam Taylor-Britt, I like quite a bit as well. And then, Tyson Anderson, that's what the class was to me, was the shoring up the secondary, giving the secondary some depth, which is where I saw some possible needs there. Now I don't, from what I've read about Zachary Carter, that might have been a little bit of a reach. but I like the secondary pieces. So I would have loved to have seen one of those interior offensive linemen fall to them, and then really be able to just like turn the offensive line. I think they've already turned it from a strength to
Oh
or
yeah.
from a weakness to a strength, but to just like be able to fully lock down the whole thing would have been cool to see. But that didn't come to fruition. So I did like the direction they went with their first round pick and their second round pick. Um, so and then and Volson. I thought that was a good pick for a depth piece for the offensive line as well. So I didn't. This wasn't like they're not going to crack the A for me, but I do think that this was like a B- to a B level draft.
Yeah, I've got it as a C plus.
Okay, we're not that far off then.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's not that I mean, like I said, I think it was an average draft. I think it was on the better end of average for them. But there was just some other players I kind of would have liked as better fits there, and some positions I would have liked to see them address that they didn't really address. So now let's get on to Cleveland here. Obviously, without the first round pick for like the next like 40 years because they got Deshaun Watson. But they, I don't think they even had a third rounder or a second rounder. I think their first pick was in the third round.
It was, yeah.
So they got Martin Emerson, cornerback, as their first pick. Alex Wright, the WCW star from the 90s. If you're a wrestling fan, you know who Alex Wright is. They did get David Bell at 99 overall. Perrion Winfrey, who I really liked, out of Oklahoma, defensive tackle. Cade York, the LSU kicker. We got kickers going now. That's what we're, hey, kickers are people too. Then, they stayed in the city, got Cincinnati running back Jerome Ford, who I thought was a really good value pick for them. Then Mike Woods, Isaiah Thomas, and Dawson Deaton ended their draft. So obviously, they made most of their moves in free agency this year, trading the fifth rounder for Amari Cooper, trading for Deshaun Watson. So I mean, their draft class will be judged on how that works out for them, especially if Deshaun Watson ends up missing the year, but he's still a young quarterback. We don't know how that's going to play out, especially we just saw Trevor Bauer get suspended for 2 seasons for one allegation, while Deshaun Watson has 22 allegations. So if they're going by MLB standards, Deshaun Watson will be suspended for 44 seasons. We'll see how that works out. But yeah, I thought this was just a solid draft. I did like David Bell. I thought he was decent value where they got him at. And they got him about where I had him at, like kind of end of the third, fourth round is where I had him at.
He fell quite a bit after his combine.
Yeah. Which, I mean, like if you watch the tape, it kind of shows up on there too. I mean, he made some spectacular catches, super productive wide receiver, but he made a lot of those spectacular catches because he didn't really generate a lot of separation. But I really liked Perrion Winfrey. I thought that was a really good pick. Jerome Ford, I thought that was a really good pick for them as well. Mike Woods, I think he's got he's got a little bit of juice to him. I mean, we'll see what happens with that. But other than that, like I said, I think this is just a solid draft. I don't think it was necessarily like a great one because ultimately everything they do, their upcoming season, their foreseeable future, especially when it comes to the draft because of how many picks they gave up, it's going to be judged on Deshaun Watson and winning Super Bowls. If they don't accomplish winning Super Bowls or even a Super Bowl, then the experiment failed. So for me, I'm just gonna go ahead and throw a grade out here. I've gave it a C minus.
Yeah, so we're almost spot on how we feel about this then. For me, the 3 picks that I liked were Alex Wright, David Bell, and Perrion Winfrey. They're the second and third of their 3 third rounders, and then their first fourth rounder. Martin Emerson, just from the little bit that I did watch of him, it didn't really jump off the page for me, maybe because I watched so much Sauce Gardner, and that's a tough, bill to live up to. But I do like Alex Wright quite a bit. I do think that David Bell is better than his testing numbers show, and I think that he'll be I think he'll be productive right off the rip, honestly, with Jarvis Landry out of the picture. And then Winfrey, I think that he could be an impressive player as well. Jerome Ford, I don't think he's a bad running back, but it's just, I don't think he's really hardly ever going to see the field. I mean, you've got Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, and then Dearness Johnson, who might be one of the most underrated backs in the league. Now, granted, Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson both could hit the free agent market at the end of next season. So maybe Jerome Ford sees the field at that point, but then, I mean, knowing the Browns, they'll probably draft another running back, the year after that. So he could be a guy that ends up just getting lost in the fold anyway. So for me, it was those, I'm not so sure about Martin Emerson, not sure how to feel about that, but I liked Alex Wright, I like David Bell, and I like Winfrey. So those were kind of the three picks that stood out for me. So I mean, putting a grade on it, it felt very average. So I'll just say C.
Yeah. All right, let's move into the Dallas Cowboys here. You know, started off first round with Tyler Smith, which some people thought was a little bit of a reach, but the more that comes out, the more information apparently, like the NFL was higher on him than a lot of draft people were.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think that was a super reach. I still think it was a little bit of one, but I don't think it was a bad pick at all. Sam Williams, off-field issues there at Ole Miss, but he's got some talent. Jalen Tolbert, which I thought was one of their better picks, getting him at 88. Jake Ferguson, Matt Waletsko, offensive tackle. Deron Bland, Damone Clark, or Damon Clark, however you want to pronounce it. John Ridgeway and Devin Harper. I understood some of their picks, but a lot of their picks I didn't really understand. Like, for example, a lot of people were kind of curious about like the Damon Clark pick, because this is a guy, he just had spinal fusion surgery this offseason, which is, I think, is like a pretty major surgery. So he probably doesn't see the field this season at all, maybe not even next season, we'll see. But whenever he was healthy at LSU, he was a very dynamic linebacker, so that's a very high risk, high reward pick. So I mean, I don't fault that at 176 overall, but
Right.
Tyler Smith, I thought they kind of reached on a little bit. But like I said, I don't think that was a bad pick. Sam Williams has some question marks there. I did like Jalen Tolbert, but a lot of their other picks, I'm just kind of, I mean, maybe Matt Walesko, he becomes a good swing tackle. Maybe we'll see. I wasn't super high on him either. Deron Bland, picks kind of bland,
I like it.
Devin Harper, I mean, we'll see. So I mean, and plus they only got a fifth rounder for Amari Cooper.
Yeah, that was the big thing, man.
Yeah, which, I mean, obviously that was before the receiver market went nuclear. But looking back on it now, I mean, that's bad. That's bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna give this class. I'm gonna give it a D.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not super high on it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's really only like three guys, I guess, that I really want to talk about. The obvious one being Tyler Smith. I don't think it was that bad of a reach, especially with the holes that they have opening up on the offensive line. And look, if you can get a guy on the offensive line where like the first word everybody used to describe him is mean, violent, that type of thing, like you're going to have to coach some penalties out of him. But with what with work they've done on the offensive line in the past, you hope that they can do that. Jalen Tolbert, I like that pick quite a bit.
Yeah,
I thought that was great value at that point, especially considering Michael Gallup is going to miss some time to start the year. You don't have Amari Cooper to be able to get a wide receiver that at that point that I think was such a great value. I thought they had a home run there. And then Matt, let's go from what I've read about him. He's got like a 7-foot plus wingspan. He's in terms of like a developmental tackle, a project, not a bad gamble at that point. So, yeah, I mean, it's like I don't know, like a C minus, I guess. Or I mean, I only talked about 3 players out of the like 9 picks that they had, I think. So, not a lot going on there, but I do think that they had a couple of pretty solid picks though.
Yeah, so now let's move on here to Denver with the Broncos. Obviously, they traded their first round pick for Russell Wilson. So I've already just off the bat, you're doing really good in the draft.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then they followed that up with Nick Bonito, Greg Dulcich, who was one of my favorite, if not my favorite tight end in the class, other than like maybe a couple other guys. Damari Mathis, Iyomia Owazuriki.
One of the hardest
Sorry,
names to say in the draft class this year. Yeah.
yeah. Delaren Turner Yell, Montreal, Washington, Luke Wattenberg, Matt Henningsen, and Fayon Hicks. So I thought they did a really good job in this draft. Obviously, I really like Dolchich a lot, especially the pair there with Albert
Put him
O.
next to Albert O.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a really good pick. Obviously, their first round pick, I loved this year for them. With Russell Wilson, I thought that was a great use of a first round pick.
Absolutely.
I think Mathis is a really good cornerback as well. I like that pick for them. And I think Wattenberg is a pretty decent center as well. I thought that was a good pick for them at 171. So I think he could come in. I mean, he might be able to start right away, but if not, at worst, I think he's a really decent, rotational guy there on the offensive line. And I think Nick Bonito was a really good linebacker as well. I think they needed linebacker help. They addressed that. Where I thought was a good player. So for me, I'm going to give this. I'm going to give it a solid B. I think they did a really good job here.
Yeah, we're not far off on this one either. I mean, for the first three picks were the picks that made the class for me. With Nick Bonito, I thought that he was a great value in the second round, and then like you, I'm Greg Dulcich was my second favorite tight end in this class. So to be able to get him in the third round, pair him with Albert O after losing Noah Fant in the trade that they got them. Russell Wilson, I thought that was a great job on that. Then Mathis in the
I'm
fourth
sure
round.
you did. I'm sure you were really happy about that one.
Yeah, just anytime you can get Russell Wilson on NFC West, I just think that is a great move. But so those three picks kind of made it for me to where that this was a solid B for me as well. And there is the potential there. They had a handful, like 5 or 6 day 3 picks that could very well turn into nice role players for this team. So I thought overall, especially without having a first round pick, I thought that they did a really good job this draft.
All right, now let's move on to Detroit. Look at your boy out here. So obviously the beneficiaries of Jacksonville, Detroit landing Aiden Hutchinson at 2 overall, which got a lot of people had as their best player in the draft. Jameson Williams, who a lot of people, including myself, had ended up coming around on as the best receiver in the draft. Josh Pascal out of Kentucky. Let's go, baby. Defensive tackle there. Kirby Joseph, I thought was a really good safety pick for them. And then they followed that up with James Mitchell, Malcolm Rodriguez, James Houston, the edge rusher out of Jackson State, who I really like, and Chase Lucas at cornerback. So Detroit nailed this draft for me. They killed it, which should surprise nobody with the guy that they got running the show now up there. This was, to me, probably the second best case scenario for the Detroit Lions. Outside of, trading pick 12 for like Devo Samuel or, Devontae Adams or somebody like that. They killed this draft, man. So for me personally, I love it. I'm just going to go ahead and I give it an A-.
Yeah, so this was I will agree with you, although mine's a flat A, but I will also agree with you that this is another A class, and it's really not much of a shock. I mean, all Brad Holmes does is draft well. He was a huge reason why the Rams for so many years were able to move first round picks and still hit on mid round picks and build an eventual Super Bowl winning team. He was a big part of that, and this makes 2 years in a row now with him at the helm that I really feel like Detroit has killed the draft, and I was not shocked in the slightest to see him do it again. Aiden Hutchinson is a stud. I was surprised to see them trade up for Jameson Williams, but look, that's clearly their guy. So to see them make that move, I love it. Josh Pascal, I'm a Kentucky fan, so I've got the rose-colored glasses on. But I think that that was an incredible pick as well. I think that he was a great value at that point, and
Yeah, for
we'll,
sure.
we'll we'll make a mean duo with Aiden Hutchinson, and then Kirby Joseph. He was a safety that I was, the Rams picked a little bit later in the third round whenever they got him, and he was a guy that I was like, man, I really hope the Rams can get him. And then not long after I had circled him, Brad Holmes took him. So that wasn't really much of a surprise at all. But I like that pick as well. So yeah, I mean, just those 4 picks alone, that gets this an A for me on this class. And then they had some guys on day 3 that they took some shots on that could very well end up producing as well. But yeah, I like this class quite a bit. So once again, 2 years in a row now, Brad Holmes just does not miss.
Yeah. Other than trading for Jared Goff. But
that also will prove to be a not miss because they're going to get a great quarterback next year.
more than likely. But these are some straight up kneecap dudes right here. Like they will take your
Yeah.
kneecaps. Dan Campbell's gonna love it.
See, and look,
love Detroit.
Hard Knocks is going to be fun.
Oh man, it's gonna be such a good time. Let's move on now to Green Bay. Still no first round weapons for Aaron Rodgers, but look, it don't matter because they got Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt, two dogs,
NFL ready
dogs out of Georgia. Follow that up with Christian Watson, Sean Ryan, Romeo Dubes, Zach Tom, Kingsley Enigbare, Tariq Carpenter, Jonathan Ford, Rasheed Walker, and Samore Tour. I don't know how to pronounce that name, but I'll tell you this. I like Green Bay's class a lot, probably a lot more than a lot of people did. Christian Watson is obviously going to be the main focus of that just because they finally did give him a weapon. They lost Devontae Adams. I'm telling you right now, I don't know if he'll be the best receiver that they took because I'm so high on Romeo Dubes. I love every time you would watch Carson Strong film, that dude would just pop off the page. Like I thought he was the most underrated wide receiver in this entire class. And they got him at 132, guy that I was really hoping Indianapolis would have looked at. Sean Ryan and Zach Tom, I thought were really good picks at the tackle spots as well. Kingsley and Igbare, I thought was a really good pick there for them as well. But yeah, obviously the two, Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt, two of the better defensive players in the draft. I thought they did a fantastic job in this draft. I'm gonna give them a B plus. They weren't quite an A, but I thought they killed it for the most part.
Yeah, my favorite thing about this class or about this draft for them wasn't even the receiver they took, honestly. Like there were a couple guys on the board I liked more than Christian Watson, or they grabbed Christian Watson. What I loved was, like they had pick 22 and pick 28 in the first round, and people were screaming, take a wide receiver. And they didn't take one. But the same wide receivers that were available at 22 were available at 34 whenever they picked in the second round. Like there were no other wide receivers that came off the board. All the wide receivers came off, or now, they could have traded up and grabbed one possibly, but
they did trade up in the second round to get Christian Watson.
Right. But like, they could have tried to trade up in the first to get like Treylon Burks or Jameson Williams, guys like that, but they didn't do that. And then at that point, it's like, well, they got to use one of these 2 first round picks on a wide receiver, but they didn't. And by the time that they traded up in the second round to grab their guy, he was still there. So I love the fact that they were able to get a couple of impact players for the defense that does need some help as well. I know that, everybody wants Aaron Rodgers to have help, and rightfully so after trading away Devontae Adams, but the defense is not picture perfect either. So I did love that they did that. And I mean, I wouldn't have been mad about George Pickens over Christian Watson, but Christian Watson, it's obviously very easy to see the appeal there with the physical, the attributes that he has as a player. There were things I liked, things that I wasn't as crazy, but I kind of settled in on a flat B for Green Bay, but I didn't think it was bad. But I did really appreciate their approach and their patience and their belief. Look, they believe that they can find impact receivers in the second round and the third round. And with past results, it's kind of hard to doubt them for that, considering that they have done that on a regular basis. So I didn't mind them waiting and getting Christian Watson in the second.
Yeah, no. I think they had a fantastic draft. I think Packers fans should be excited. And really, like a lot of their players can be impact guys right away as well. So,
Yeah,
you know,
which is
they're
what
ready to
you
go
need.
out.
They're
Yeah,
they are a
exactly.
team
Right
that's
now.
looking to win now.
Yeah, exactly. So now let's move on to Houston, down to the Houston Texans. Obviously, the big name there is Derek Stingley Jr., number 3 overall to them, over your boy Sauce Gardner.
Yeah.
I believe look, I might be onto something. Kenyon Green there, 15 overall, offensive guard out of Texas A&M. Jalen Peter, Baylor safety. John Mechie, Christian Harris, Damian Pierce, Thomas Booker, Tiquan Quitoriano, and Austin DeSulis. Um, I think Houston had a really good draft, man. I thought they had a really good draft. I thought they did a really good job. You know, obviously we'll see if Stingley, you know, he had the really just flat out ridiculous production there in 2019, but
Mm.
then didn't really play much over the last couple of years. So I mean, we'll see if that tape was true or not, but he killed the pro day that he had. It kind of vaulted him back up above Sauce Gardner in a lot of people's eyes, due to the pro day and the film he put on there in 2018. But I thought Kenyon Green was a fantastic pick for them. And I really like Jalen Peter too. They got John Mechie. I think Christian Harris was a good pick. Thomas Booker might have been one of my favorite day 3 picks in general, out of any team. And I thought they got a good running back there in Damian Pierce as well, out of Florida. So for me, like, this was a really solid draft. I'm gonna give it a B, just a solid B. I thought they did a really good job in maximizing the value that they did have, but it's all going to hinge on whether Derek Stingley's production was 2019 or if that was just a mirage. And you know, we'll see what happens there. But I thought they did a really good job, man.
Yeah, so I mean, I had Sauce as the cornerback one for me, but I was very open that it was a 1A 1B scenario to where Derek Stingley was obviously the 1B. So I don't hate him for taking Stingley one pick ahead of Gardner, but you know, obviously if the first cornerback was going to come off the board, I thought it should have been Gardner, but I don't think that's terrible. I thought that Kenyon Green was a little early. I mean the offensive line, interior offensive line, especially, is a need for them. But I thought that might have been a little bit early there. I did like seeing them grab John Mechie. I thought that he was good value at that point. And I don't think he's a 1 by any means, but I think he is a nice building block for that receiver room. This is obviously not a overnight rebuild for this team. They've got holes all over the field, and John Mechie is a good player. And you know, if he doesn't have the injury, he probably goes earlier than this. So I thought that he was a good value there, and a team that can bring him along slowly, get him healthy. I think that he will be a very solid NFL receiver, a really good slot receiver is what I kind of have him eventually end up being. And then Christian Harris, I like Damian Pierce. He very well could be the best running back on the team right off the rip from day one. And then Thomas Booker was a solid pick in round 5 as well. So it was, if they take Sauce instead of Stingley, and then they grab, you know, maybe I don't know. I like Kenyon Green. I don't think he was a bad pick by any means, but I like Zion Johnson more. He was still on the board, you know. So there's a couple of directions I would have liked to see them go differently. So I'll say like a C+ would probably be what I would give this draft.
All right, now we get to your boys, the Indianapolis Colts, baby. Let's go. Chris Ballard. All he does is just kill the draft every year. So they started off, you know, didn't have the first round pick. You know, let's talk about that. We got Matt Ryan now. It is what it is. But day 2, they started out with Alec Pierce, wide receiver out of Cincinnati, Jelani Woods, fucking freak, tight end, Central Michigan offensive tackle Bernard Raymond, Nick Cross, the safety out of Maryland, who was one of my absolute favorite players in the entire draft, Eric Johnson, Andrew Ogletree, Curtis Brooks, and Rodney Thomas. So for me, so the Alec Pierce pick, I get why they did it. Obviously, size, speed, you know, jump ball guy, but I did have Sky Moore rated higher. I think I would have liked them to get Sky Moore. But obviously with the Colts, they just freak athletes the entire draft, just freak down the board. I think their final RAS score. So if you follow Kent Lee Platt on Twitter, you know about RAS, relative athletic score. The Colts entire class, like total class, had like a 9.7 out of 10 athletic score, which was which was the highest in the draft. Um, so that being said, I would have liked to have seen Sky Moore over Alec Pierce. Jelani Woods has the tools to probably be the best tight end in this entire class, just because of how much of a freak he is. Like the guy's just that's ridiculous. Like he's ridiculous. Wasn't necessarily used as a tight end or a receiver a lot until this last year. Still relatively new to the position as well, but the favorite pick in this whole class for me were the two picks after that. Bernard Raymond, who I think can step in right away. I think he could be their left tackle in the future, to compete there at left tackle for them. If not, he's just fantastic rotational guy. But I think he has a really good chance to start. And then Nick Cross, the safety, who they traded, believe their third round pick next year to move up into the third round to grab him. Nick Cross is a guy, if you follow me on Twitter, also shout out to my guy Jake on Twitter, Colts fan, at sports guy Jake. He's been a huge Nick Cross fan as well. So we've been banging the table. It was like, man, like hope the Colts can get Nick Cross. And then they traded to get Nick Cross. So I love that. Eric Johnson, just kind of an iffy pick. Andrew Ogletree, I didn't really understand as well. I thought that was a massive reach for them. They could have possibly got him as a undrafted free agent. Curtis Brooks could possibly be a steal, though. He might have been, other than Raymond and Nick Cross, I think Curtis Brooks might have been my favorite pick in this draft. If you don't know much about him, look him up. Just insane pass rushing production from the defensive tackle spot. He's undersized. I believe he's only 6'2" and 280 pounds, which is why he dropped a lot. But the guy just absolutely kills people in the pass rush game. Believe he had a pass rush win rate at defensive tackle at 29% last year in college, which was the best out of any defensive tackle in this class. So I loved that pick for them. And then Rodney Thomas, I thought was also kind of a reach there, but another athletic freak, which is all of these players were just freak shows at athletes. So for me, I'm going to give this one a B minus. Because I thought there was some better value on the board. Like I said, with Alec Pierce, I like Alec Pierce as a wide receiver. I like Sky Moore better. Jelani Woods, I think he has the talent to be the best tight end. But, for me, I like Greg Dulcich better. And I think Jeremy Ruckert I had rated higher than him, but I can absolutely see why they made the pick. But I thought they killed it with the Raymond pick. I thought they killed it with Cross. I thought they killed it with the Curtis Brooks pick on day 3. The other, few picks I thought were pretty big reaches. So that's why this isn't super high. I do think it was above average, but it's just right above that. It's not quite a C plus, but I've got it right at a B minus.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So, I mean, like you, I'm not a Colts fan, but like you, I really thought that whenever you guys were on the clock in the second round, I thought that was going to be Sky Moore coming off, and he didn't have to wait much longer. I think it was the very next pick. Yeah. Kansas City ended up taking him. But I do think Alec Pierce will be a nice compliment to Michael Pittman. And I think that Matt Ryan will like that, his downfield speed as well. Yeah, I mean, I really don't have too much to add. I think you covered it really well. Jelani Woods, Bernard Raymond, Nick Cross. I liked all 3 of those picks. Jelani Woods has a lot of upside. Now, obviously, you guys still have Mo Alley Cox's big self there, but Jack Doyle is gone. So, anytime you get a chance to add another athletic freak next to Mo Alley Cox, if Jelani Woods develops, that is scary. Having those two come up the middle.
Well, they got Kylan Granson too at tight end as well, who they picked last year. So
right. So they are definitely stocking up on athletic freaks without a doubt. But yeah, the two latest round 3 picks were my favorite picks of this class, Bernard Raymond and Nick Cross. I thought that those were home runs at that point. We're early in the draft process, you saw Bernard Raymond comfortably in the first round in a lot of mocks and ended up falling to the third round. And Nick Cross was he was another guy that I was hoping that the Rams would grab. So he was somebody that I also was paying close attention to. So I really like those 2 picks a lot, to where this was another class to where I'm pretty comfortable giving just a flat B, but just because of the reason you guys didn't have a first round pick, I had to knock it down to a B minus. But I like the players though.
Yeah, for sure. All right, yeah. I bet y'all thought I was gonna give him my A, didn't you? You thought I was gonna go there, didn't you? Yeah.
I thought you was gonna go a little higher. I ain't gonna lie.
No,
I'm
yeah,
impressed.
B minus. You're actually higher than I am. On him. But I mean, I do like Alec Pierce. I mean, I think, best case scenario, he's a guy like Jordy Nelson, because I mean, anytime you're
tools,
anytime you're that big and that fast,
right?
You got a chance. All right, so let's go to Jacksonville, the Jaguars, AFC South, baby. I love it. Number 1 overall pick. We did call that on our mock draft.
One of the few we got right.
Travon Walker goes. Then they follow that up with Devin Lloyd, who I really like. Luke Fortner out of Kentucky. 65 overall, Chad Muma, another linebacker that I really liked. Then they followed up with Snoop Connor, Gregory Jr., and Monteric Brown there to end their draft. This whole draft is going to be dependent on Travon Walker.
Yeah.
Because they went against the grain. They had a guy that up until a month ago wasn't even in the top 10 in most people's drafts. Sometimes some people had him in the late teens, and he went number 1 overall. So if he doesn't become a Pro Bowl caliber player, an all pro caliber player, they missed. But if he does develop, and I mean, Lord knows he has all the tools to, it's just going to be, how they develop down there. And notoriously, Jacksonville has not been good at developing players. But I liked the Devin Lloyd pick. I really liked Devin Lloyd there. And to pair Devin Lloyd with Chad Muma, who I thought was another really underrated linebacker.
I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but they had a nice linebacker signing in free agency as well from Atlanta.
From Atlanta. He's got an odd name.
Yeah.
But yeah, those 3 linebackers there, I think are solid. I think it's a really, really solid linebacker group.
Yeah.
And then I like Luke Fortner as well out of Kentucky. I thought that was a really good pick for them. The other 3, I mean, it just kind of is what it was. But so for me, I think this was, until we see how Travon Walker pans out with them passing on Aiden Hutchinson, I'm going to have to give it a C.
Yeah, I think C is definitely fair. I mean, for me, I thought Aiden Hutchinson was the clear number 1 pick, but you can paint the picture for Travon Walker just with the athletic traits and making the argument that he was played out of position a lot at Georgia because they were asking so many guys to do so many different things just because that defense was so loaded with talent. So you can make the argument. And if that pick ends up hitting, this class looks a lot better. But after Travon Walker, I loved the next 3 picks.
The next 3 picks, yeah.
Devin Lloyd, Luke Fortner, Chad Muma. I thought those were 3 great picks. So I like that quite a bit. I'll give this class a C+ off of those 3 picks. But if Walker ends up hitting and he ends up reaching his full potential with his athletic traits, then this vaults into like the
I think A-.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So we'll see you in 3 years, Jacksonville. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But I mean, we know how this ends up. It's the Jaguars. we know.
I'm trying to give Doug Peterson a little bit of benefit of the doubt, but I don't know if anybody can
overcome
Balake.
It ain't Doug Peterson I'm worried about.
I know.
This Balky out there.
I know. I don't even call him Balky.
They were wearing clown masks, bro. They wore clown masks. All right, so now let's get into probably, other than Baltimore, probably my favorite class out of any draft class, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah. The rich get richer.
Tyreek Hill away. But they started it off with Trent McDuffie at 21, George Karlaftis at 30, Sky Moore at 54, Brian Cook, Leo Chanel, Joshua Williams, Darian Kennard, offensive tackle out of Kentucky. Great pick. Jalen Watson, Isaiah Pacheco, and Najee Johnson to end their class. Look, I'm not even like a huge Karlaftis fan, but this was right around where I would have him at 30, either early 2nd round guy. Trent McDuffie, there's some size concerns there, which is why I think he dropped some, but I thought he was clearly firmly the third best cornerback in the draft. They got him all the way at 21. Um, I loved the Sky Moore pick. Loved it. From a team fit, player fit, this was like the perfect spot for Sky Moore to go.
Yeah.
Could not have picked a better spot for Sky Moore. Brian Cook out of Cincinnati, I thought that was another really strong pick for them as well.
Yes.
Safety. Darian Kennard, getting him at 145, I thought was a steal. I think Joshua Williams, I think Jalen Watson, they threw in some cornerbacks there. I believe they had 3 cornerbacks with Williams, Watson, and Najee Johnson that were picked there on that day 3, just to try to add more depth to that position. And then even threw a running back in there at a Rutgers. So, for me, Kansas City killed this draft. So they might not have, and I've been pretty critical of Brett Veach's previous drafts. He's got some good players, but he's busted on quite a few, like especially of like the higher picks, like with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and some of the other guys that they've taken there. Yeah.
Which Hardman's still really young, but still.
So I mean, we'll see how that turns out. But I've been pretty critical of his drafting over the last few years, but he has found some good players. But I thought he knocked this one out of the park. So this is the third and final team out of the draft. Out of all the teams, I had 3 A's in this class. It was Detroit, Baltimore, and Kansas City. I give them a solid A. If these guys play as well as I think they could, especially Sky Moore, this becomes an A+ for me.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll just go ahead and skip right to the grade because I agree. This is also an A for me. I love the fact that Trent McDuffie was the clear best player available for me at 21. So for them to trade up and grab him while they had the draft capital to do so, I love that. And then George Karlaftis, he was a guy that I wasn't comfortable with at the beat. Like whenever doing mock draft 1.0, I was like, man, I don't think this guy should be going this high. But then he kind of settled into the back of the first round, and I was a lot more comfortable with that. And I thought that was great value there. And Sky Moore, I don't think you could have dreamed up a better player, personnel, scheme fit with the wide receiver than what Sky Moore got. And then Brian Cook, I love that pick as well. And then Darian Kennard, he was a tackle for the Big Blue Wall in Kentucky. I think he kind of settles in more as a guard, but I think he's going to be a very good one though. And so I like that pick as well. So yeah, I thought that they did a great job with this draft. Chiefs fans should be very excited. And this one, like I already said, this is an A for me as well. I thought they did a great job.
Yeah. And I mean, like, will they be as scary as they were last year with Tyreek Hill? Anytime you lose a guy like Tyreek Hill, it brings a whole new dimension to your team because teams can defend you differently. Right. That being said, I think they have a better team overall than they did last year. I think they're a better team. So yeah, they're not going anywhere if this draft pans out. They're going to be a strong team for years and years to come. Now let's move into Las Vegas Raiders, who hosted the draft. Obviously, they don't have a first round pick because they now have Devontae Adams. So automatically, you did good.
You did good on day one for sure.
You did good.
Didn't have a second round pick either, though. They didn't pick until the third round.
Yep, the third round. And then, I thought they got good value. They got Dylan Parham, the offensive guard out of Memphis there, which I thought was clearly a need for them.
Yeah.
Then they took Zamir White out of Georgia, the running back. We'll see. Neil Farrell, Matthew Butler, Tyre Munford Jr., offensive tackle. I thought was a really good value selection for them there at 238. And they drafted another running back. So they drafted 2 running backs. That's a no-no. You draft one late and then you get an undrafted free agent. That's how this works. I mean, unless you got like Jonathan Taylor, like DeAndre Swift, somebody like that's in there at you. But they didn't have that guy sitting there. This was not that running back class.
No.
So yeah, I think for me, I wasn't a huge fan of their drafts outside of Parham. I really liked the Parham pick, but outside of that, I thought they reached. I mean, it's not a bad class, overall, but they only had one pick that like I really loved, but they did get Devontae Adams. So I'm gonna throw this in like the C+ category. Because you did get a guy that I really liked. The other guys, not really super high on, but they might end up being good, like rotational guys, provide some depth to the team. And but I think Dylan Parham could start right away. And obviously Devontae Adams is one of, if not the best wide receiver in the game of football. So
He certainly could be the second best receiver in football for sure.
yeah. Well, I mean, after last year, I mean, that's it's hard to argue that. Um, so yeah, I think that bumps it up to a C plus. Without Devontae Adams, this is probably looking at like a C minus up to a D plus for me.
Yeah, that's fair. You know, there's no way to know where they would have went with their first round pick, but if history tells us anything, the Raiders probably would have reached, because that's just what they, which granted, you know, it was a new front office and things like that. So maybe that wouldn't have been the case. I did like the Dylan Parham pick as well. You know, they didn't pick up Josh Jacobs' fifth-year option, so Zamir White could be a much more relevant player come this time next year. There's some definitely I like Zamir White as a player quite a bit. There's the injury concerns, but if he can overcome those, you know, he's got some bad knees, but if he can overcome that, I think he could be an impactful running back in the NFL. But that's, you know, a lot of ifs surrounding that. And then the other pick I really liked was Matthew Butler. Just watching, you know, being a Kentucky fan, watching a decent amount of SEC football, I think that he will be an impactful interior defensive lineman for them. Being able to get him in the fifth round, I thought that was solid value. And then, you know, adding Devontae Adams into that, I say B minus is probably where I settled in for this. But yeah, you know, I would have liked to seen this Raiders regime with a first round pick just to see how they act. But you know, we've got to wait a little while for that. But they did grab some players that I liked. You know, not a lot of draft picks, but I didn't love it, didn't hate it. It was like a C plus B minus.
All right, so now let's move on to the first Los Angeles team here, and that is the Los Angeles Chargers. My boy Big Tom Telesco, who's routinely been killing the draft over the last few years. And I thought he did a really good job in this one as well. So Zion Johnson at 17, solidifying that line for Justin Herbert, who I thought was like probably my favorite offensive line, even over the tackles. Like I thought he was my favorite offensive lineman in the class. JT Woods, Baylor safety at 79, I thought was a fantastic pick. I loved JT Woods. Isaiah Spiller, I thought was a decent pick, but I think he would be good. They already have Austin Eckler, so he's not going to be asked to like have a massive role there.
Yeah, Justin Jackson's comfortable there as well. He'll be competing with Justin Jackson.
Yeah. And then they got Otito Ogbonia, Jamari Salyer, Jasir Taylor, or Jasir Taylor, however you want to pronounce that, Dean Leonard, and Xander Horvath. So I thought their first two picks, they absolutely knocked it out of the park on. You know, Spiller, I think, does have some value there in the fourth round. Their other picks, I mean, I think they could be good depth, you know, players, but just judging off the first two picks and then kind of where they went with the other pick, I'm going to give this a solid B. I think this is like an above average class for them. But it's not quite in that A territory. There's, you know, some reaches there in the later rounds. You know, I think Salyer I think he could be a really good like swing. He's played like all positions at Georgia. Like he was guard, he was tackle. He could probably play some center too. So I think he's really good depth there. But yeah, I mean, I just think this was just another, you know, classic Chargers, you know, good class. You know, there's not really a lot of weaknesses on that team. So they were able just kind of to address some depth issues. But then I thought they got some really impact guys that I think could be just killer players with Johnson and Woods.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're a team position like the Chargers to win now, you know, the key really is to hit on those early picks. You're not too worried about the developmental guys. Obviously, it helps to hit on those, but you need to hit on those early round picks. And I think Zion Johnson was such a great fit for this team. JT Woods, I like quite a bit. The Isaiah Spiller pick, I didn't like. I'm not the biggest Spiller fan, honestly, but the guys that I liked more than him, like Brian Robinson and Rashad White, and then the obvious running backs that were, you know, well above him, those were all off the board at that point. So if they wanted to add running back depth, I thought at that point that was solid value. they did a good job of addressing the defensive line before they added the guy from UCLA. So like, I think that's just kind of another depth piece. I mean, I think this was kind of just like a B minus draft. It was above average, I think, just because I think Zion Johnson, I've got a lot of high hopes for him. I think he's going to be a really good player. So it really hinges on him and that first round pick they made just to kind of shore up that offensive line and further protect their franchise quarterback. We're going to be talking about the Chargers a lot leading up to the season because I was already kind of high on them last year, and they have done nothing to lower my expectations coming into next year. So it'll be more focused on Zion Johnson and how he develops more than anything. And I loved that pick at that point. Like, opposite of I thought that the Texans reached on Kenyon Green. I loved where Zion Johnson went. So I did love that pick.
All right. So now let's get to your boys and the Los Angeles Rams. So started off with Logan Bruce at offensive guard, Jacoby Durant, who I really like as a slot receiver there. Kyron Williams, not a super huge fan of, from Notre Dame running back. Then Quentin Lake, Darian Kendrick, Daniel Hardy, who I thought was really underrated pass rusher. Russ Yeast and AJ Akuni. Yeah, I mean, I think the Bruce pick was a really good. They clearly had a need at guard, with losing Corbett. And I think he can step in right away and kind of fill that role as well. I really like Jacoby Durant. I think he can be a really good slot guy for them as well. Like I said, I liked Hardy as well. I think he could be a really impact, a guy that I thought should have went a little bit earlier than 235. But I mean, I can see why he kind of threw there just because Montana State's pretty small school, but look, they've had some pretty good success with small school guys there in Los Angeles for the Rams. So, yes, I give this one. I want to say like a C plus, B minus. I think this was like a little bit above average class.
Yeah, I mean, I liked what they did with the limited amount of picks they had.
They didn't really have a lot there but look, they got a Super Bowl.
So. Yeah, so whenever the 32nd overall pick came across the board in the first round, I just turned on Matthew Stafford highlights, and I was more than happy with our draft class. But yeah, Logan Bruss, that was offensive guard was the one position on the line that I was hoping they would address. And anytime you can grab a big guy from Wisconsin, you're doing something right. And then Jacoby Durant, I think, is he has the athletic tools to be an impact corner in the league, and now he gets to learn from Jalen Ramsey, who isn't he's not a bad guy to learn from. So I think Jacoby Durant could be a key defensive piece. They lost Darius Williams to the Jacksonville Jaguars this offseason, who was their cornerback too. That is definitely, they brought Troy Hill over as well during the draft, which was kind of like a low key piece that I feel like has been overlooked. Like Troy Hill played his best ball whenever he played for the Rams. He left the Rams to sign with Cleveland, and even in his post-signing or at the post-draft conference, whenever Troy Hill came back from the Rams, he kind of talked about how leaving the Rams, going to Cleveland, and experiencing that just the difference in the championship environment that you're put in compared to something like Cleveland, which it hasn't been so much. He was very happy to be back in LA, and I think that being able to add him back into the secondary during the draft process as well is something that should be factored into this, which is that's kind of how they do things. But I do like the Jacoby Durant. I think he's being able to learn from Jalen Ramsey. I think that's going to do him a lot of favors. Kyron Williams, I wasn't as big of a fan of him either. He's a very nice feel-good story. I mean, he's a St. Louis kid. He grew up a Rams fan. Steven Jackson was like his favorite player. He took a picture, I don't know if you saw it, but there was like a viral picture of before a Rams game. He took a picture with Steven Jackson as a kid. And then, so now he's the next Rams running back. And Darrell Henderson is a free agent, I believe, after this upcoming season. So there is a world where this backfield is Cam Akers and Kyron Williams after the 2022 season. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's just kind of I'm not going to doubt Les Snead until he gives me a reason to, and he has
Right.
not given me a reason to with these mid-round picks. He continually finds value and depth with the mid-rounds, which is why they are able to trade first-round picks and still be able to field a competitive roster. So until he gives me a reason to think that they shouldn't be doing that, I'm just going to continue to trust in him. But the first pick, they didn't pick until 104. They were able to grab Logan Bruss, and I love that pick. So I'll give him I'll give him just a flat B.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure you're happy with it because, like I said, or like you said, anytime you can trade a first rounder and that first rounder ends up being pick 32, probably works out pretty
You
well.
did something right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And that's kind of like the same thing with me and the Colts. Like, until Chris Ballard gives me a reason not to trust him in drafts, I'm just going to assume that you did something good. So,
Yeah. That guy probably knows more than I do.
Yeah. Oh, he definitely knows.
just maybe.
Without question.
Maybe.
Just without question. So now let's move on to Miami Dolphins here. They are the next team up. Didn't really have a lot of picks. Only had four picks in the whole draft.
Yeah.
But they got Jalen Waddell.
I love their
they got
first
Tyreek
pick.
Hill. Which one?
The first pick they made, Channing Tindall, the linebacker from Georgia. Yeah. I love that pick.
Yeah, so they got Channing Tindall there, Eric Ezukanma, Cameron Good, and Skylar Thompson. The quarterback out of Kansas State. Yeah, they didn't really have a lot of draft picks, but like you said, I mean, I really did like I like Tindall a lot there. And I think they got a good receiver too in Eric Ezukanma. I think he could be a really good piece for them as well. Good depth there. They didn't really have a lot to go
6'2" and over 200 pounds. Like he's got some good size on him.
Yeah. I mean, not like Colts size.
Right. But they just moved Devontae Parker.
I just want to throw this out there just real quick. Then we'll get back to the Dolphins. But the Colts, with them picking Jelani Woods and Alec Pierce and all that,
yeah,
their red zone offense.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
I know. It's like all 6'3" and up, right?
Yeah. The smallest dude they have that could possibly play there is Paris Campbell if he's on the field, and he's 6'1". So Michael Pittman's 6'5", Alec Pierce is 6'3", Mo Alley Cox is 6'6", Jelani Woods is 6'7".
6'3" and up, yeah.
And they're all fast. They're all freaks. Imagine trying to guard that team, man.
How about Matt Ryan getting to go from no weapons at all to, hey, here's all these just complete freaks you can throw to.
Yeah, here's the fucking monstars. Just throw it up.
Not to mention a solid offensive line, the best running back in football in the backfield. Like, yeah, Matt Ryan's got to be on cloud nine.
Nyheim Hines. We didn't even talk about Nyheim Hines. Yeah, but now let's get back to the Dolphins. You talked about size, and I was like, my God, like I was just looking the other day at the size of the Colts weapons.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy.
God, dude. I think they're by far. I don't know any team that's bigger than they are on offense.
No, that's fair. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So I mean, they got Jalen Waddle, they got Tyreek Hill, and like you said, I did like the Tindall pick, and I liked their second pick, the wide receiver at Texas Tech. To me, this is like, I'll give it a C+, just because they didn't really have much to draft with. So it's kind of hard to kill a draft when you don't have very many draft picks. But they did get Tyreek Hill. They did get Jalen Waddell. We'll see if Tua is the guy or not, but that's to be decided.
Yeah. So I was going to give them a B- because of the last part that you said. They used their first round pick to surround Tua with more weapons and Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, my God, that's going to be so much fun to watch. Those two guys are just going to light the field on fire with how fast they are. And then I really like Channing Tindall. They're the linebacker out of Georgia. The dude's just a freak sideline to sideline. It's going to be, he's going to add a fun element to that defense as well. Kind of sticking with the speed theme. So I like that pick as well. So I was going to give them a B-, but it's really mostly around, why they didn't have a first round pick and then what they did do with their third round pick, grabbing the linebacker out of Georgia. Look, man, they're not going to have to wait long to figure out if Tua is the guy or not. I know you and I both have our concerns and have our questions. the questions are going to be answered much sooner rather than later with what they've done to surround him with the talent they have. So, and that we haven't even mentioned what they did shoring up the offensive line, during free agency as well. So I think Miami's had a great offseason, and it all just comes down to Tua. That's what it is.
Yeah, offseason great. I give them an A.
Right.
But like I said, just draft. They didn't really have a lot of picks, so it's kind of hard for me to give you like a high draft grade when you don't really pick a lot. All right, so let's move on now to the Minnesota Vikings here. This is a team, like every time you looked, they were trading down. Every time I was like, oh, Minnesota's up. No, they're not.
Not anymore.
No, they're not. But I still thought they had some pretty good value there. They got Lewis Seen out of Georgia, safety, who I thought, would sneak into the, late first, and he ended up being the last pick of the first round. Coupled that with Andrew Booth, who I have no idea how he slipped to 42. And then Ed Ingram, Brian Asamoah, who is another guy I thought was like really good value there at 66. Caleb Evans, Sezi Odomewo, Ty Chandler, Vidarian Lowe, Jalen Naylor, who I thought was another really good value at 191, and Nick Muse, the tight end, at 227. So I thought they did a really good job on their trade down because they were able to trade down. They were getting more picks, and I thought they got some really good value on like 3 or 4 of their guys there who were available that I didn't think would be available. So props to them. I believe they have a first-year GM. I thought he did a really good job.
Yeah, came over from Cleveland.
Yeah, and so I think they have I think they have a really good chance to come out of this ahead and have a really good draft. So I'm going to give this a solid B. Also too, like I had the Colts at a B-, and we were just talking about that. I have the Vikings at a B, but I do think the Colts had a better draft than the Vikings did. So I'm going to go ahead and bump the Colts grade up to a B, solid B instead of a B-. Possible. Well, no, let's give it a B+. Let's give it a B+. Fuck it. I'm not going to doubt Chris Ballard.
I knew you would come up eventually.
I'm not gonna. We were just talking about that red zone offense, and I'm like, B+.
I knew you probably eventually. We'd get there. We'd get there. Yeah. No, I mean, I love Minnesota's first 2 picks as well with Lewis Sine and Andrew Booth Jr. Like I talked about my love for Kyer Elam, and liking him more than Andrew Booth Jr. But I also thought that that Booth Jr. was a end of the first round type of guy as well. So being able to get him at 42, I thought was solid value. And then I like Brian Asamoah from Oklahoma, the linebacker. I like that pick quite a bit as well. Ty Chandler from North Carolina, the running back. I don't know if he ever even sees the field, to be honest with you. I think they have good talent at running back. But I'd give this draft like a C+. Outside of the first 2 picks, there wasn't a lot that excited me a whole bunch, but I did like there was a very, very clear need to upgrade the secondary in Minnesota, and they did that with their top 2 picks. So I do like that quite a bit.
All right, now we get into the New England Patriots. I know you're excited for this one. I could tell it's like I knew it was coming up, and like I just kind of saw a smirk. I was like, oh, he's gonna love this one. So yeah, strange draft
in more than one way.
Yeah, started out kind of predictably with New England trading down. Imagine that,
right?
But they still kept the first rounder. They used it on Cole Strange, the offensive guard out of UT Chattanooga, who I don't think anybody had as a first round pick, but apparently the NFL was higher on him than the media / us. But then they followed that up with some more questionable moves there with Tyquan Thornton available at pick 50. I mean, you had Sky Moore.
Of course, he was available at pick 50.
Yeah.
Why would he have been?
Yeah. Then Marcus Jones, Jack Jones. And then they followed that up with Pierre Strong, Bailey Zapp out of Western Kentucky. Let's go, baby. I thought that was a good pick for them.
Whenever you draft your franchise quarterback, everybody knows you need to follow that up by also drafting another quarterback in the 4th round.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was actually on record. I put on Twitter, I said, because somebody was just like, what's your biggest, they asked me actually on Twitter, they're like, what's your biggest draft hot take that you have? And I said, Bailey Zapp will have a longer career in the NFL than Kenny Pickett will.
Well, he got drafted before Sam Howell too, which was interesting. But
Yeah.
you know,
I didn't say he was going to have, I didn't say he was going to be a starter. I'm just saying I could see Bailey Zapp being like that, like Brian
he's
Hoyer,
gonna
like
be the best backup you've ever seen.
yeah,
By
like
God.
Brian Hoyer, like just sticks around for like 15 years as a backup. I didn't say he was going to have a better career. I just said he would have a longer career than Kenny Pickett would.
Right.
So, and I thought he landed in the perfect backup spot.
He's
Backup
certainly going to be a backup.
dude, backup quarterbacks in New England, man. Like for whatever reason, like they last forever. Like they will stick around the league. But then, like I said, Pierre Strong, Kevin Harris, both running backs on a team that for whatever reason has like 50 running backs. They continually take running backs. Followed up with Sam Roberts, who I actually thought that was a pretty decent pick for them. Andrew Stuber, I thought that was a decent pick. And then Chasen Hines, the center out of LSU. Yeah, man, there's a lot of head scratchers in this draft for sure. I know you're loving it. Look, I can't wait for your reaction. I can't. So I'm just gonna go ahead and I give them a D. It's not quite an F, because I liked some of the picks they made, but like I give it like a D.
You don't have to take it there. I will. I'll do
exactly.
it for you.
I know. Yeah, I'm trying to be a little bit kinder. It's a big deal. I think he's kind of earned the benefit. Maybe not as a GM, but like if there's anybody like say if you pick some bad players as a GM for whatever reason, Bill has been able to get good production, especially out of offensive linemen, man. Like you can question offense. Like that's one thing that New England does better than almost anybody in the NFL is they develop offensive linemen. So I'm not going to argue with, I mean, I thought there was better players on the board for sure. But yeah, I mean, Cole Strange, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if like 2-3 years down the road, we're sitting here and it's like, oh, all pro guard.
He's going to be an all pro guard. 100%. 100%.
So, I mean, yeah,
100%. That's the one thing I will say about this class is like, like one of my favorite things about the whole draft process was the viral video of Sean McVay and Les Snead just sauced off their ass on a live stream whenever Cole Strange comes off the board at pick 29, and McVay says, if we wasted time thinking he'd be on the board at 104, and does that,
they liked him,
and exactly, it was more of like a compliment, like they also were really high on him. He had a great Senior Bowl, he had great testing numbers, like he's going to be a great player for New England. I have no doubt about that. The thing that really but still, I do still think that it was a reach, like, because, you can get like the New England Patriots could have found a guy in the second round, the third round that they probably also could have turned into an all pro guard.
Yeah. The running backs were,
I do still think it was a reach.
Bro.
Well, and Tyquan Thornton, like,
yeah,
you've got George Pickens, you've got Sky Moore, you've got Alec Pierce, you've even got Jalen Tolbert, who I liked more personally than Tyquan Thornton, who went like another like almost 40 picks later. Like if there's one thing I can bet on, is that the Patriots are going to completely fucking whiff on receivers in the draft. Like you can bank on that. If they draft a receiver, the guy's going to suck. Like the last receiver they drafted that was good was Julian Edelman, and I think they played him. I think they drafted him to play like corner or some shit. Like they didn't even want him to play.
Yeah.
They didn't even want him to play receiver. Okay, like and like, so I mean, Tom Brady should get as much credit for that as anybody. So yeah, I didn't like that pick. And then now I know that James White is older, and I know that Damian Harris, I believe this is the last year on the contract, but I mean,
got Ramondre Stevenson too.
Yeah, they've got Stevenson. Do you really need those running backs? And you just drafted your quarterback of the future last year. You really needed to use a top 150 pick on a quarterback for real? Like, really? Yeah, I'm look. Bill Belichick has caused me a lot of harm as my time as an NFL fan. It is well documented. If you've been a fan of this podcast, if you've listened along, that if there's a chance to dunk on Bill, I'm going to take it. As great as he is, don't care. I don't get these chances very often, but he has provided me yet another one here. This is an F for me. The Patriots. This was hard to watch, hard on the eyes, hard on the ears, hard on everything. Cole Strange is going to end up being a great guard, though. Like it's fun as the
If
jokes are and stuff like that.
if your entire draft involves me, like the pick is in and the player comes out, and I'm just like, what? If like every pick of your draft is like that, then yeah. But look,
I do think Marcus Jones, the corner from Houston, he's another guy too. That's probably just like Bill's going to end up like with how great of a defensive coach he is. He's going to turn him into a great corner. You know, like
they'll all end up being good players.
Yeah, because they're in a great organization surrounded by great people, which is why people like myself hate the Patriots so much, because they are a great organization and they develop players in a great way, and it's really fucking annoying. But
yeah, and now imagine how great those players would be if you picked like super talented guys instead of just like random guys. So like if you can get all pro stats out of like random dudes, imagine you picking like imagine if the Patriots
like actual guys like, worth first round grades and stuff.
Exactly, man. They'd be like Hall of Famers. All right, so now let's get into New Orleans. Just trade.
I'm gonna let you break down this
borrow from the future for the now, even though for whatever reason Drew Brees is gone, Sean Payton's gone. They're probably not competing in the division.
You've got Tom Brady in your division, but hey, go all in.
Yeah, exactly. Every year. So they did move up. They got Chris Olave, who, I think is a good wide receiver. They got Trevor Penning at tackle, which to me was their two biggest needs. They needed a tackle. They needed a wide receiver. Alontae Taylor, DeMarco Jackson, and Jordan Jackson to end the draft. So they didn't have a ton of picks, but there's something interesting here I wanted to show you. I know we talked about it before the show. So they ended up trading. This is so for Chris Olave, Trevor Penning, and let's see here, the 6th overall pick. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Go ahead and talk about the draft while I pull this up.
Yeah, so I mean, just player wise, as far as that goes, like Chris Olave he's not my favorite receiver that went in the first round, just because, like, Garrett Wilson, who is younger than him, outproduced him last year. Jackson Smith-Njigba, who is my favorite receiver next year, just spoiler alert, he's wide receiver 1 for the 2023 draft, would have been wide receiver 1 for the 2022 draft if he was eligible to come out. Both of those guys outproduced Chris Olave, but Chris Olave did have prior years of producing as well. So, he has the tape. He is a very talented receiver. Now, was he worth trading the draft capital that they gave to get up there and get him? I don't know, because I feel like the only position worth trading what they traded would be if you're getting your franchise quarterback, just my personal opinion. And then Trevor Penning, going from Teron Armstead, who is like one of the best left tackles in the league, to Trevor Penning, who is very raw compared to Armstead. We'll just say that. A lot of questionable moves in a division that I don't think that they're going to win. And maybe they're a wild card team, maybe, but then you're counting on Jameis Winston to lead you to the promised land. It's just like, why are we acting so desperate? That's the one thing I don't get.
And then they also signed Tyrann Mathieu to a 3-year, $33 million deal.
I think that was solid.
Yeah, I mean, it's solid, but I mean, like, eventually, like, this is a team that was $70 million over the cap, and they just keep borrowing from the future for the now, but they're not a Super Bowl contender in the now. Like, when is it going to be time to just tear it down and go full rebuild? I just don't understand the thought process of the Saints right now. And Mickey Loomis is like using that credit card. Like, he's, I'll pay it later. I'll pay it later.
Right.
Right now, bro, you're maxing that shit out, and you're running out of room here. So this was insane. So in order for the Saints to draft Chris Olave, Trevor Penning, and get a 6th round pick, this is from Warren Sharp at Sharp Football that put this out. They gave up the picks that amounted to the following players and picks. So just for those 3 things: Chris Olave, Trevor Penning, 6th rounder; AJ Brown, Jahan Dotson, Brian Robinson Jr., Sam Howell, Cole Turner, Kyron Johnson, a first round pick next year, and a second round pick in 2024 for Chris
Yikes.
Olave, Trevor Penning, and a sixth rounder. That's just like,
Yikes.
that's bad. So because of that reason, not that I dislike Olave, not that I dislike Penning, but for the price you paid just for that and a sixth round pick, I got to give you an F just off principle. Like AJ Brown, Jahan Dotson, Brian Robinson, who, the Alabama running back.
Yep.
I think he's a decent running back.
Yeah.
Sam Howell, there's a quarterback of the future right there, possibly. Cole
Maybe.
Turner, Kyron Johnson, a first rounder next year
In a loaded class.
In a loaded class, and a second round the year after that. Yeah, not good. For a team that I don't think anybody thinks has Super Bowl aspirations this year, but you never know. It's the NFL. But just because of all of that, that they gave up just for that, I got to give you an F. So I'm sorry, Saints fans, but eventually, man, you're gonna have to pay that credit card off, and that interest rate is not getting better anytime soon. All right, so now, did you give them a grade?
I want the Patriots to settle on at the F, so I'll give them a D minus.
Ooh, that's cold. That's cold. All right, so now we get into a team that I think is finally trending in the right direction, and that is the New York Giants. So their first two picks, I thought they killed, which obviously if you have two top 7 picks, you're probably going to get good players.
You should hopefully do pretty well.
Yeah. So they did get Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal, Wan'Dale Robinson there. I thought that was a good pick for them. Joshua Ezidu, Cordell Flott, who I really liked as well. Daniel Bellinger, Dane Belton, Micah McFadden out of Indiana. Kind of a questionable pick there. DJ Davidson, Marcus McCathan, and Darian Beavers. So yeah, top of the draft. Obviously, I think their first 3 picks were really good for them. I think Bellinger is a pretty decent tight end as well out of San Diego State. I thought they just had a really solid draft. Obviously, their first 2 picks are going to make this draft, but I'm not just going to roll out an A because you had 2 top 7 picks. Unless you're the Jaguars, it's kind of hard to screw that up. So yeah, but I do think it's a solid B. I'm going to say a B. I don't know if I want to go B plus because that's high, but I think it's a solid B.
Yeah, flat B.
For the draft.
I agree. That's the same. That's what I landed on as well. Thibodeau and Evan Neal obviously is a great way to start off a draft with having 2 of the first 7 picks. The Wan'Dale Robinson pick, the only reason I really have hope for this is Brian Daboll and then Wan'Dale Robinson's talent, because a guy of his size and weight, he would have to be an outlier to succeed in the NFL. And I think that he could be, assuming he's lined up with the right offensive mind to use him the correct way. And I think that Daboll could be that person. That's the only reason that this pick isn't more concerning. I think that there are more NFL-ready, well-rounded receivers that were on the board whenever they took Wan'Dale. But obviously, as a Kentucky fan, I'm going to have some rose-colored glasses on. I'm going to be happy that he got drafted that high, just to be happy for the player. Former Mr. Kentucky, like Mr. Kentucky football, just love to see that. But I am glad that there is a new head coach there in New York, that I have a lot more hope and more faith that they can use him the correct way, versus Jason Garrett calling the plays. I'm going to be a little more hopeful. I'll go B minus, because outside of those day 1 and day 2 picks, there wasn't, they had a good amount of 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, and then a 6th round pick that didn't really move the needle a lot for me. But look, Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal on both sides of the ball can be instant impact players to help this team. And
build in the trenches, baby.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to like that. And I'm not one of those guys that thinks that Kayvon Thibodeau is going to be, I don't think his big personality is a fault or anything like that. I think he's going to be a great player. And Evan Neal I like a lot. So
especially at right tackle.
Right. Yeah. They've got Andrew Thomas there at left tackle. Evan Neal
Which,
doesn't
hey,
have, or
you
at
know
left
who had
tackle.
the Evan Neal to the Giants pick?
Who had that?
Hey, let's go, baby. This podcast right here. Let's go.
Nice.
All right, so now let's get on to the other. Like, what's going on here? Are New York teams drafting well? What is happening here?
It
Let's
was
get on
a
to the
weird year.
New York Jets. Number 4 overall, your boy Sauce Gardner going to the Jets. Follow that up with Garrett Wilson, who was my personal favorite wide receiver in the draft. And then somehow Jermaine Johnson, hey, maybe you weren't that far off in your draft when we
I know,
swapping.
right?
He
Shouldn't have been down that far though.
Bro,
There was something wrong.
You knew. Don't short yourself on that. You knew. Jermaine Johnson falling all the way to 26. They traded back into the first to get him. Yeah. Follow that up with Breece Hall, Jeremy Ruckert, who was one of my favorite tight ends in the draft, Max Mitchell, who I think could start right away at offensive tackle. Yeah. Loved it there. And then Michael Clemens as well. So look, I love this draft. I loved it for the Jets. I originally had them at a B+. I gotta bump it up, man. This is like I had only 3 teams that had an A. I gotta add it to a 4. I gotta add a 4 to it. They had an A draft. This was
absolutely
an A draft.
They did.
But I mean, so this is my only problem with that. If you have 3 first-round picks, I mean, that's
the thing, though. They didn't have 3 first-round picks. They had
traded up,
but they identified somebody that was a first-round talent that was sliding, and they made the aggressive move to go get him.
I agree. And but even then, so even if they didn't do that, I love the Breece Hall pick for them.
Right. Yeah.
Love the Jeremy Ruckert pick for them.
Yep.
I think he has as much potential as to be the best tight end as anybody, except maybe Jelani Woods, just because he's not a freak of nature that shouldn't exist on the planet. But the Max Mitchell pick, love the Max Mitchell pick. So even without those 3 first rounders, I love the players that they got. I love the value that they got. And then Michael Clemens too. I think he could be a good player. So they killed this draft. So A, you're moving up to the A, got you as an A. So congratulations, Jets fan. Like you were saying earlier, man, it's almost the exact opposite of Chicago, where the Jets are just trying to load young elite talent around Zach Wilson.
Yeah. Then that was a big reason of what made this my favorite class this year.
They still got their offensive tackle and Max. They were still able to add an lineman because we don't know what's going to happen there with the lineman. I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Mekhi Becton.
Yeah, Mekhi Becton. We don't know what's going to happen there with that.
Right.
Supposedly, there's talk about them just cutting him.
That's
400 pounds. I mean, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, they're not going to cut him.
Even without that, I mean, they went out last year. They got Corey Davis. They
drafted Elijah Vera Tucker.
Drafted Elijah Moore, who I think was a really. Elijah Moore there. They drafted him. I think he's a really good weapon.
Great receiver.
They added Garrett Wilson and Jeremy Ruckert to that. So you're looking at, you got a really good young, high talent tight end. You're three wide receivers deep that all 3 of them can make plays. And then you got a pretty decent offensive line too. And then you add a Breece Hall behind him, to take some pressure off running the ball, who I think was clearly everybody's running back and winning this class.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really much of a question. I mean, some people liked Kenneth Dixon a lot, but
Kenneth Walker. Yeah.
Kenneth Walker, the 3rd. Yeah. My bad.
Yeah.
But nobody had him better than Breece Hall. So,
not as an overall back. No.
This was a killer draft, but I'll go ahead and let you finish there. Sorry to give you that Kanye West.
No, you're good. I mean, this was my favorite draft class this year. I love Sauce Gardner. Obviously, that's been well documented up to this point. My favorite player, probably personally in this draft, Garrett Wilson. My second favorite receiver behind Drake London, and I think a great fit there for the Jets. He's going to be a nice safety blanket for Zach Wilson. Jermaine Johnson was well deserving of being an earlier pick than the 26th pick in the first round. They were able to identify the fact that he was sliding. They traded up in to grab him. Breece Hall, I think they had to trade up in the second round again to grab him as well. Not much, but a couple picks to grab him. And Jeremy Ruckert, like you said, that's another a really great value tight end. Look, you think the Jets didn't like their tight end room. They grabbed what was it, the tight end from Cincinnati? Oh my God, what was his name slipping my mind? What's the tight end from the Cincinnati Bengals last year?
Oh, the Bengals.
Yeah, the Bengals. What was that?
Oh,
They signed him in free agency. What's his
yes,
name?
they did. Jeez, man. Now I'm going blank.
And they grabbed one from Minnesota as well. Oh my God, I'm going blank on both their tight
I am
ends.
too, man. We're so into these rookies that we
Yeah,
forgot NFL players existed. Hold on
but
a second.
they made
I'll pull it
two.
up while you talk.
Yeah, so you'll get the names. I don't know why I can't remember them because the Rams literally just played the Bengals in the Super Bowl, but they added two great tight ends in free agency. They added Jeremy Ruckert to that. Like they completely overhauled their tight end room, which was just abysmal last year. Max Mitchell was a great value in the fourth round. Like the Jets absolutely killed this draft, and they're setting up Zach Wilson for success. Complete opposite of what the Bears are doing for Justin Fields. So I'm very excited for the Jets. CJ Uzama. Yeah, thank you. And then they grabbed a guy from the Vikings too. That is
Tyler
another
Conklin.
one. Tyler Conklin. Thank you. So they added Uzuma and Tyler Conklin, who are two very, usable tight ends.
Also added Tevin Coleman too, and Braxton Berrios.
Yeah, they added Tevin Coleman prior to last year, so he'll be fine. But this is the Breece Hall show now. Make no mistake about it. Even with Michael Carter there as well, who they invested a fourth round pick in last year, this is the Breece Hall show. Like he is automatically the best running back in this room. He's a better pass catcher than Michael Carter. He's damn sure a better runner than anybody they have in the room. And it's only a matter of time before he's a 3-down back for the Jets. But that's we'll cover that more as we get into fantasy. But what they did in this class is nothing short of incredible, in my opinion. And this was my favorite draft class this year. I thought the Jets killed it. It's A+.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is all on Zach Wilson now for sure. Like,
yeah,
you got no excuse. But I like Zach Wilson. So, we'll see how that turns out. Let's move on to another team that I thought had a really strong draft, and really a really strong first round, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. Trading for AJ Brown. Trading for AJ Brown from the Tennessee Titans. Then following that up with Jordan Davis at defensive tackle. Two massive pickups there. Then Cam Jurgens at center, Nakobe Dean, Kyron Johnson, and Grant Calcaterra, tight end out of SMU. I thought was a really good value for them. Look, they had a really good draft. And what's funny about the AJ Brown trade is the pick that they used to get this. So they traded the Colts pick to the Saints, and then they used the Saints pick they got to trade for AJ Brown. So realistically, the Colts pick helped get AJ Brown the fuck out of Tennessee. So Chris Ballard out here playing 4D chess. He's like, look, we're going to give this to the Eagles. They're going to swing a trade. AJ Brown's gone. So they added AJ Brown, Jordan Davis. I'm not necessarily as high on Nakobe Dean as a lot of people, but I still think at 83, that was a really good value for them. So yeah, to me, this is a B+, not quite an A because they didn't really have a ton of picks, but they did get AJ Brown. I'm going to be eternally grateful for that. So not quite an A, but I think it's like right there. Like it's right there. So I'm gonna give it a B+. Like what's the cutoff before like a B and A? What is it? Like a 93 is a B and a 94 is an A. That's what it was in school.
Something like that. Yeah.
This is like a 93.8. Like this is one of those where like you go to the teacher and you're like, look, can you just round this shit up? Like
yeah,
you're gonna deny me an A off of 0.2, but like I said, dude, I'm a tough grader.
I'm gonna do the student a favor. I'm gonna round it up for him. This was another A for me, and a lot of it was because that they did turn their multiple first round picks to getting AJ Brown and giving him the contract extension that he deserved, and then on top of that, the absolute freak of Jordan Davis. That it's just like of all the if I could pick a spot for him to land, it would have been between Baltimore and Philadelphia. Like this was one of the two spots I was hoping he would go.
Yeah, they jumped up ahead of Baltimore.
Right. And then N'Kobe Dean, like I mean, there were a lot of times I saw him getting mocked to Philly in the first round, but it's well documented that Philly's not using first round picks on linebackers, and they didn't have to because they got him in the third round. And I thought that was a steal. And I'm a N'Kobe D fan. I didn't think he had any business being on. Like I get the medical concerns and stuff like that, but he had no business still being on the board at 83. So getting Jordan Davis, trading for AJ Brown, getting N'Kobe Dean in the third round. Yeah, this is an A for me and a job well done. And now all eyes are on you, Jalen Hurts, because they've got all the draft capital in the world, and to be able to position themselves for a top quarterback next year if he doesn't perform. So that's kind of where my eyes are at now. But the Eagles did that. I thought that they killed it both with trades and with the actual draft picks themselves.
Yeah, I agree. I love the trades. I was a huge fan of it.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So now let's move on down to their brethren there with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, the only quarterback drafted in the first round, really the only quarterback drafted in the first two rounds, and that is Kenny Pickett at number 20 overall. Then they followed that up with George Pickens, DeMarvin Leal, my boy, Calvin Austin III. Love that. Connor Hayward at tight end, Mark Robinson, and another quarterback out of South Dakota State to end the seventh round, Chris Aladokun. So this was Kevin Colbert's last draft as GM of the Steelers.
That was a pretty cool press conference. Did you see that?
Yeah. You got a little emotional there.
Yeah, that was cool.
It's always cool to see, man. But hopefully he leaves them in the same way that, Ozzie left Baltimore, where they picked that quarterback in the first round, comes an MVP player. I'm not necessarily as high on Kenny Pickett.
No, neither one of us are.
But I can see why they did, especially too, like, it's always cool to see a kid play for the team that, the area that he's used to. I mean, he went to Pitt.
Right.
He gets to play in Pittsburgh. He's used, and I think that's going to help him a lot too, honestly. Like, he knows the city. He's used to the city. He's used to the stadium. Like,
yeah,
he's not going to have to go through that, adjustment period of like, where is this? Where is this? Where is it? Like, he already knows it all. So I think that's a big deal, actually. And then look, anytime the Steelers take a wide receiver, no matter where they take a wide receiver at,
they're going to be great. Book it.
It's going to be great receiver. Well, they took two of them, so you can pretty much guarantee. And look, my love for Calvin Austin.
Yeah.
The fact, like, I've been banging a drum for Calvin Austin. The fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers took Calvin Austin means I was right in my assessment of how good of a player he was. The Steelers don't draft shitty wide receivers. So yeah, I'll let you talk because I got to sneeze.
So the affirmation for me came with George Pickens. That's the wide receiver where I was like, yeah, this guy's about to be fucking incredible. Calvin Austin still concerns me. Like the size is just, man, like similar to Wan'Dale Robinson. Calvin Austin's going to have to be a unicorn to succeed in the NFL. But it's not like if there's an organization to land in to where you can see that to come to fruition, you certainly think it's the Steelers. But no, I loved this landing spot for George Pickens. I'm not a huge Kenny Pickett fan. If they're gonna draft one in the first round, I would say, hey, shoot for the stars and go for Malik Willis. Even though he wasn't even my favorite, I think he has the highest upside. Go for it all. Kenny Pickett is definitely the safe pick. I think it's between him and Desmond Ridder in terms of like the quarterback that's the most pro ready to start day one. So I get it from that sense, and he's the Pittsburgh guy. Look, and if you are a rookie quarterback, you have to be fucking thrilled to have the defense on the other side of the ball that Pickett has. And then you've got Najee Harris, you've got Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, Calvin Austin. Like, this dude is
still don't have an offensive line.
Don't have an offensive line, but man, you have got a defense and you've got some weapons. So, they're
here's the thing too, man. Like, he goes to a team, an organization where a coach where like Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season in his career.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to start now. Like, they will figure a way to have a winning record. And so just from that sense, like the Steelers, they're getting at a minimum, they're going to get a B minus for me. Just they are an above average franchise. They are just in all aspects of football. I'm not going to give them anything like C is average. I'm not giving them anything,
Yeah,
C
exactly.
plus,
Especially
like,
for Colbert's last draft.
yeah,
I'm gonna give it a solid B, man.
yeah.
And like I said, if Kenny Pickett does end up becoming that franchise quarterback,
Then
you
it's an A.
automatically, yeah, A plus
Yeah,
automatically.
absolutely.
All right, so now let's get down to one of your favorite teams here, the San Francisco 49ers, who, yeah, this draft was interesting to say the least. So, obviously they didn't have the first because they have Trey Lance. We'll see if he plays this year, if they're going to ride out the Jimmy G train. Who knows what's going to happen with that? Uh, just call it, man. I love it. So I think you hate the 49ers like I hate the Titans. Like I think
Yeah, that's
like
a pretty fair comparison. Yeah, I'm about to give you some proof on that one for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So you probably gonna be thrilled with this draft. So Drake Jackson, edge out of USC, Tyrion, that's some straight out of Game of Thrones shit right there. Tyrion Davis Price, Danny Gray, wide receiver at SMU, Spencer Buford, Samuel Womack, Nick Zakalij, Kalia Davis, Tariq Castro Fields, who I actually really liked, and then Brock Purdy out of Iowa State. To end the draft there. I mean, I like Womack okay. I really like Tariq Castro Fields. I think he's a really good value for where they got. I thought he was going to go way earlier than that. But outside of that, man, like this was kind of like similar to like New England, where like every time they picked a guy, I was like, do I dislike the player? No. Do I dislike the player that high? Yes. I thought there were better options on the board for them. So to do you proud, I'm going to go ahead and give this 49ers. I'm going to give them a D plus.
I love it. It makes me so happy. So like Drake Jackson, their first pick, 61 overall. I like that pick. Truthfully, I do. I think that is. I think that's.
Well, they've had good luck with pass rushers.
Right. So. Yeah. They do well in that aspect. The fact that they didn't have a first round pick because they, traded up to draft their quarterback who they're not even sure is going to be starting next year is a lot of fun. Even though I'm a Trey Lance fan, that's just a lot of fun for me as an NFC West foe. It's fun to watch all that play out. I think like 4 of their past 8 or 9 picks, something like that, have been used on running backs, which is hilarious to me. Like I just love watching them just continually draft running backs and just have no idea what they're doing in that aspect, and just running back after running back after running back.
I mean, they'll probably be good. I mean,
yeah. Kyle Shanahan is going to make, Tyrone Davis Price a great running back. And then they're going to draft another one in probably the second round next year. And it's going to be like, it's just the continual, we'll talk about the Seahawks in a minute, but the continual battle between the 49ers, the Seahawks, and the Patriots to see who can use the most draft capital on running backs. It's got me on the edge of my seat. I can't wait to see who comes out on top in that aspect. But yeah, they're getting a solid D from me. I like Drake Jackson. Outside of that, don't really care. And I like him. I'm not gonna shit on the Seahawks near as much coming up here because I actually like their draft class quite a bit. Even though I just made a running back joke. But yeah, no, I mean, you take Drake Jackson. I think that's a great pick. Outside of that, there's not a lot for me to like here. So yeah, they're a solid. They're a solid. D.
I think Tariq Castro Fields surprise you. He's a good player.
He could. Yeah, he could. Absolutely.
All right. Well, now let's get to another one of your favorite teams, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. Obviously, starting with Charles Cross, the offensive tackle, finally getting Russell Wilson, an offensive line. Oh, wait.
No, wait a minute.
No, they're not. Wait until he's gone to finally get a tackle. But then they followed that up with Boy Mafe at 40, Kenneth Walker at 41, Abraham Lucas, another offensive tackle for Russell Wilson. Sorry.
Oh.
Kobe Bryant, Tariq Woolen, the 2 cornerbacks. Hated them getting Tariq Woolen because I was certain that dude was going to be a Colt, especially with the athletic profile. I know Chris Ballard was like, Tyreek Smith, the edge out of Ohio State, Bo Melton at 229, who had no business being there at 229.
No.
Yeah, I don't get how he was available at all. And then Derek Young. So yeah, obviously the big news, they traded Russell Wilson. Now they're rolling out with Drew Lock. Seems like unless they make a Baker Mayfield move, it seems like Drew Lock and Geno Smith are going to battle that out. Um, but I really like, and I understand the Kenneth Walker pick because Chris Carson, there's a good chance Chris Carson probably never plays football again. But they did have
Maybe.
Rashad Penny who finally broke out, and then they immediately pick another running back.
Well, they brought him back on a 1-year deal. And that's it.
Yeah. So I mean, I understand the running back pick.
Yeah.
I think they could have got better value later. Like Damian Pierce, for example, like somebody like that. I mean, I'm not the biggest Kenneth Walker fan, but I do think he's a good player. 41 overall, those is a little rich for me. Then I thought Abraham Lucas was a really good pick as well. It's good value. Tariq Woolen, I think, has all the physical tools. He's just going to have to be coached up a lot. Like he's got a lot of technique issues that he's got to work through. But if he can get technique down, that dude like 6'4", run like a 4.28 at cornerback. Like
he's literally the only guy doing that. Like
yeah,
that's it.
That's freaky.
There's nobody ever been playing corner at his size that's running at 4.26. He is literally the guy. And I like Charles Cross. He was a clear cut like end of a tier at offensive tackle.
Yeah, and then Bo Melton too. I mean, I love the Bo Melton pick. There's no way that guy should have been there at 220. No way.
No,
he should have never made it past the 4th round.
Right. And like I'm a little bit of a bigger of a Kenneth Walker fan than you are. Like I thought that this was a clear, in my opinion, this was a 2 running back class between Breece Hall, who was my favorite, and then Kenneth Walker as well. So I had no problem with them taking. I thought that was a very Seattle Seahawks pick. But with the Chris Carson injury concerns and Rashad Penny being on a 1-year deal, I had no issue with that pick. And honestly, it made me kind of sad to see him land in Seattle. And it makes me sad to say that I really like this pick. I really like this class. Like Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen were maybe my 2 favorite round 4 corners, and Woolen didn't even go in the 4th. They ended up getting him in the 5th, but I thought he should have been a 4th round pick. So this was the one class where it was like they were bored. Like I'm not going to give them an A, but they're a B+ for me. They were right there on that A threshold.
I give them a B. I think there's a solid B.
I thought they did really well, and it makes me sad as a Rams fan to say that, but I was very impressed.
The good news is for you, they traded away Russell Wilson, and now they get to roll out Drew Lock. So,
amen to that.
Yeah. So now let's move on to Tampa Bay here, winding down the last little few teams we have. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, obviously Tom Brady is back. They're going all in on this year. Drafted Logan Hall, defensive end, who I thought that was a good pick for them.
Yeah.
Luke Goedeke, Rashad White, Cade Otton at Washington, the tight end. I thought that was a really good pick. Jake Carmada, who I think is the best punter. Sorry, Buffalo Bills fans. I do think he is the best punter in the class. Zion McCollum at Sam Houston State. There is another guy that should not have been on the board there at 157. They stole him. And then Coke Hyft and Andre Anthony. This is a really good draft for them. And I think they got some dudes that can help right away.
Which is what they need.
Yeah. But then also too, like those are some guys that can help in the future too. Like this was a really good class. So for me, I'm going to give this I'm going to give it a B-.
Yeah, I think B- to B is where it should live.
I don't think it has the upside that a lot
it's
of
just a good
but
depth
it's solid
class. Yeah. Logan Hall is solid. Rashad White was my running back 3 behind we talked about the big 2 of Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker. For me personally, Rashad White was my 3rd favorite, and he, despite the James Cook love and the fact that he did get better draft capital, I think that Rashad White is a better pass catching back than James Cook is even. So that just kind of tells you how high I am on him. And I think he'll be a great complement to Leonard Fournette. And if something did happen to Fournette, he's got the 3-down capability. We'll see if he can stay healthy, if he can fit that role in the NFL. But I think that he has the skill set to possibly be a 3-down back in the NFL as well. So, he doesn't, but they're not going to ask him to do that right off the rip with bringing Fournette back. And I like the Cade Otton pick like you as well. And I mean, with was the tight end that went to Buffalo, OJ Howard, with OJ Howard at the door. That was, unnecessary pick as well. So yeah, I think this was a very, very solid class.
All right. So now we get to the Tennessee Titans. Yeah. All right. So traded away AJ Brown. He is no longer a Titan. Let's go. But they did replace him with a guy they picked who, for some reason, everybody thinks is the next AJ Brown, even though he was the 6th wide receiver off the board. And that is Treylon Burks. They followed that up with Roger McCreary, Nicholas Petit-Frere, the big name in the class, obviously quarterback Malik Willis going to 86th overall, Hassan Haskins, Chigoziem Okonkwo, Kyle Phillips, Theo Jackson, and Chance Campbell. So obviously the big one is they trade away AJ Brown.
Mm-hmm.
And they drafted Treylon Burks. And it's funny to me, I've seen on the internet now from Titans fans, well, AJ Brown wasn't really that good. He was injured all the time. He never played. He has bad knees. He's not going to last much longer. He's a diva, blah, blah, blah. So now it's funny how he was the best wide receiver, one of the top 10 wide receiver, if not I think he was like a top 7 wide receiver in the NFL. I think you could argue it. And now on Titans, Twitter, he is a bum. He's not that good. And Treylon Burks, they were able to draft a better version of AJ Brown that now they don't have to pay. I'm just telling you this: if Treylon Burks was for sure AJ, even not even just a better version, if he was the exact equal of AJ Brown, that dude would not have been the 6th wide receiver taken in the draft, and he probably would not have made it out of the top 5 picks.
Well, I mean, you can't guarantee anything like that because AJ Brown himself was a 2nd round pick.
Yeah, no, I get that.
So you can't make any guarantees in that aspect just because of where they were drafted. But I get what you're saying. I'm just saying you can't just say that based off of draft capital because AJ Brown himself didn't have Treylon Burks draft capital.
Hey, well, team's been looking for the next Tom Brady in the 6th round every single year.
Yeah, no, I know.
There ain't been a single one drafted since that guy. So,
no, point well taken.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Roger McCreary pick was a head scratcher. I don't think he's a bad corner, but he's very undersized. He's very undersized. I mean, they probably have him to play that slot role, but and then Nicholas Petit-Frere, not a huge fan of him as well. I thought he was kind of an overrated tackle in the class. At best, I think you might want to try him at right tackle, but they just drafted
he's not a left tackle.
Yeah, they just drafted Raduns last year as well, which that didn't work out well for them. It doesn't seem like, but he's still young. So I mean, either one of those guys, you're kind of hoping can emerge there at right tackle. Malik Willis is the big one. So Malik Willis, I don't think he should have been available at 86. I thought somebody should have taken a shot at him earlier. Yeah. But I can understand a little bit of why he slipped because this guy has the lowest floor. He's got the highest ceiling. So Malik Willis is one of those guys where he's either going to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL or he's not going to be good at all. He's just never going to see the field. Because you look at the arm strength, you look at the legs, you look at the mobility, and it's all just plus. I don't think it's like Josh Allen level arm, but it's close. But then every other aspect of playing quarterback, he has a lot of growing to do. Reading defenses, pocket awareness, all the the key stuff. So I can see where he slipped for some teams because he's got a lot of work to do to play at the NFL level. But if they're able to coach that into him, obviously Ryan Tannehill's not going to be helping out at all. I don't know if you saw that press conference today, but
I mean, honestly, that was kind of what I expected.
Well, yeah, of course, you're not going to help the guy take your job,
right? Yeah,
I get it.
I got 4 notifications of that to my phone. I'm like, why is this such a story? They were the number one seed in the AFC last year. He's he is considered the starter. Like he's not coming into the season like, oh yeah, my job is to groom the third round rookie. Like no, he's trying to win a championship. And now what your feelings are on how close the Titans are to win a championship or not are irrelevant in terms of what Tannehill was saying. Like it's just like I was so like by like the second or third notification of it, I was so annoyed. Like, why is this such a story? Like
one of those was probably me, and it was just a bunch of laughing faces. I thought,
no, that why I've got notifications for that turned off. But like, it was like the major networks just sending me this shit. It's like, why is everybody so surprised that that's what he said? Like, of course, like, no, they were the number one seed in the AFC last year. Like, of course, he's not like.
Yeah, I think clearly there was a massive disconnect between the media's opinion of Malik Willis and the NFL's opinion.
Definitely, yeah.
Massive disconnect. So, but there are other picks. So, Hassan Haskins, I did like that pick for them. I think they needed another run, especially since Dante Foreman now is no longer there. I think
he's out in Carolina, yeah.
I think they can take that role away. And then I really like the Okonkwo pick as well. I think he's
agree.
He's a good solid tight end. Not much of a blocker, but very Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, they lost him to New England. Now they've got somebody that could possibly step in.
Yeah. So it seems like a lot of their picks were trying to replace guys that they lost, but some of their picks, I mean, I just wasn't a huge fan of this draft. I mean, I think Treylon Burks, if it was just Treylon Burks by himself, I think I would have understood it a little more. But now with trading AJ Brown, that's how you're reading the pick. Is like now this, like if this guy doesn't become as good as AJ Brown was, then it's a bust. It's a bust pick. He can still be a good player, but if he's not an elite top 7 wide receiver in the NFL, it's a busted pick. And it's the same thing with Malik Willis. I mean, this whole class, like I've said them, like the other rookie quarterbacks, if Tennessee finds their franchise quarterback at 86 overall, this class is an A+. If they don't, then I think this class, like I said, I was not a huge fan of Nicholas Petit-Frere. I thought he was overrated coming into the draft. I didn't like what I saw in film from him. At best, he's a right tackle and a solid swing tackle, possibly. I mean, he's got ability where he might play a little more, but Kyle Phillips, I was also not a huge fan of, coming into the draft. So a lot of these picks, Tennessee, it was kind of funny, like you were with like the 49ers, where like Tennessee, every time they would pick, it would be a guy that like I was lower on than the consensus. Like I was just like, I don't see it with this guy. And then the Titans picked him. And I was just like, yes. So for me, like the fact that they picked a lot of guys that I was lower on than the media was, it just, I was excited about. So I'm going to give this draft, I'm going to give it a C-, with the ability for, if Treylon Burks hits, because Treylon Burks has to hit. You trade away AJ Brown. Treylon Burks has to hit. So with the AJ Brown trade, and then some of the guys that I just wasn't really high on getting drafted at spots that I thought were reaches for them, I'm gonna give this a C-. But like I said, if Malik Willis does become a franchise quarterback, and Treylon Burks, even if Treylon Burks doesn't hit, if they find a franchise quarterback at 86th overall, this draft's an A+.
Yeah, I do agree from that standpoint. I like Treylon Burks a lot. I don't think he's as good as AJ Brown, but I understand the business aspect of it, that they gave Tannehill too much money. They paid Derrick Henry, and we do not pay running back. And eventually, you got to pay the piper. And they could have done some cap gymnastics to make it work.
Bud Dupree the big old deal.
They could have made cuts and made it work to where they could have paid AJ Brown. But from what I read, from what Tennessee was willing to give him versus what he wanted, they were just so far apart that there was the realization that it wasn't going to work. And so they were able to get the guy that, not just Titans fans, but a lot of people pre-draft were comparing to AJ Brown, just from the athletic ability and things like that. Not to say he's going to be AJ Brown, but just like if you were going to compare any receiver in this class to AJ Brown, Treylon Burks is the guy. Like he's the one most similar to AJ Brown. So I get it from that standpoint. But
I almost feel bad for the kid though, because like now it's like
there's
I
a
said,
huge
like,
target on his back.
yeah, exactly. Like if he is anything less than AJ Brown, then
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah. But I mean, the Roger McCreary pick, I didn't mind it.
Oh no, I thought he was like a third round guy.
He was, but he was very well tested at Auburn. Like he was a guy that was, he had 15 combined pass breakups and interceptions just last year. But the arms are the concern though. Like he's got really short arms. But he has production though, and so it's a question of production.
My favorite cornerbacks in the draft.
The guys that people don't throw at because they're too scared to throw at them.
Exactly. If somebody is throwing at you that much, there's generally a reason why they're throwing at
you. For him, I don't think it's a lack of talent though. I just think it's the measurables.
I don't think, like I said, I thought he was a third round guy. It's not that I hated the player. It's just where they drafted him at. What was it, 36th overall?
35th, yeah.
35th. Yeah, see, that's a reach to me. I thought they could have comfortably got him. I mean, they probably could have traded back and
they might have been able to trade back a little bit
and got him.
I think they might have still been a little shook by the whole AJ Brown thing because it seems like that they knew it was coming, but it almost. I watched some of the post draft stuff and like it just some of the. there certainly was not excitement in the room whenever they had to trade AJ Brown.
I'm curious now because. Obviously Mike Vrabel said, they were asking him like, well, is AJ Brown going to get moved? He said, well, not as long as I'm the head coach. And then now he got moved. And you saw Mike Vrabel's reaction. Did you watch the reaction video?
Yeah.
He was fucking pissed.
I don't think Vrabel's going anywhere if that's what you're
No.
getting
No. I don't think he's going anywhere, but it does kind of start to creep in. It's like, is there some kind of disconnect now between like the GM and the head coach? Like, are they on the same page? Clearly they weren't when it came to this.
I just think a lot of it comes down to a couple of the contracts that are on the team. And it's just they kind of left themselves no choice.
But see, now their window, I mean, they had a very small window and Derrick Henry's not getting any younger. This is like the AJ Brown trade had people questioning, like, are the Titans going into a rebuild? Like, and it kind of seems like they're just kind of hanging on, kind of similar to like the Saints are in the NFC, where it's like, are they good enough to win the Super Bowl? Probably not, but they're paying a lot of guys big money.
Well, the thing about that is, and the reality of it is, like they were the number one seed in the AFC last year, and they spent a lot of the year without AJ Brown, whether it was him actually being injured or being on the field and not really doing much because he was nursing injuries.
7 games? He missed 7 games.
Yeah, and even the games he was out there, statistically, it was his worst season of his career. So it's like, and they were the number one seed. They were the number one seed in the AFC. So it's like, I don't think their season is just dependent on AJ Brown being there or not.
No.
But again, in terms of just talking about this draft class, it all hinges on what Malik Willis is.
Yeah.
And if that ends up working out or not, if it because Ryan Tannehill, I think it's safe to say in terms of being a Super Bowl caliber team, he's not the answer. Like he can get you to the playoffs. He's not going to get you over the hump. You're not going to win a Super Bowl with Ryan Tannehill. So is Malik Willis the guy or not? And that's really what it comes down to for me. If he is, then this is an incredible draft class, no doubt about it, because they got him at the 86th overall pick. If he isn't, then the Titans have, I think they can cut bait after, like prior to next year, they can cut bait on Tannehill for like 16, 17 million dead caps.
I thought it was in the 20s.
That would have been prior to this year. It's under the 20s prior to next year.
Oh no, the dead cap this year was like,
it was like, it was over 20. Next year it's under 20, not by much. It's like 16, 17 million. I was listening to somebody talk about it today. It's a lot, but it's not like you've seen NFL
It's not
teams.
like Matt Ryan dead cap where
You've
it's like
seen you've
40
you've
million
seen
dollars.
NFL team take dead
Yeah.
cap hits like that, if they need to, like to where it's not out of the question that they do it. But
Yeah,
it
but
it
at
all
that
it all
point, are
comes
you
down
going
to
into a
Malik
full
Willis.
rebuild?
And
Because
I think at
that's
that point they do, because then you've got
yeah.
Derrick Henry, who is an aging running back, and Robert Woods is on the other side of 30, coming off an ACL tear. Like if they can't make it work this year, I think they start a rebuild, and they hope that they can develop Malik Willis as the guy. So this is going to be very telling for Tennessee after this season. I think just
Yeah.
this season and beyond is going to be very
It,
telling
it,
for them.
it doesn't help that, they play in the division as the Colts do. Colts just killed the offseason. I'm just saying.
It has been. They have had
It's
a
a,
much better offseason than the Titans
it's a,
have. I don't think there's
it's,
anybody
it's,
arguing
it's,
that.
it's looking good. I think the line after the AJ Brown, after the draft, actually, I think the line changed. It was like the Colts were still the favorites in the division. There was like plus like 160 something, and the Titans were like plus 300. So it wasn't like a huge difference. But
Right.
after the draft, the Colts are now like negative, like 150 under to win the division. So you actually lose money betting on the Colts to win the division. I'm just saying. Vegas knows.
We made it to the
Now,
last team. Can you believe it?
yes, yeah, we've been on this for a minute, but it's been a long one. All right, so now let's get on to the Washington Commanders. Trading the third rounder for Big Carson. Hopefully, that second rounder next year is going to be in the Colts' possession. But picking Jahan Dotson at 16, Fedarian Mathis, Brian Robinson at running back. I don't. Poor Antonio Gibson. Percy Butler, possibly quarterback of the future, Sam Howell. Cole Turner out of Nevada, who I really like. I thought that was a really good pick. Chris Paul out of Tulsa. I thought that was a really good pick. And Christian Holmes. So clearly to me, I think they killed day 3. I thought day 3 was a really good draft for them. What day 2 and day 1 had some question marks. Because
Yeah.
I don't think running back was a big need at all for that team. And I like Brian Robinson. All right. I think he'd be a good
Yeah,
player.
he's going to be a
I
good
mean,
NFL running back.
you already got 2 running backs that you use could like almost constantly. One running back you use an insane amount for whatever reason.
When you don't use enough.
Yeah, and then you have one you don't even use enough, and now you're drafting another running back. Jahan Dotson at 16, I thought was a reach. I like the player, not at 16,
It
not
was
when there
absolutely
was,
a reach.
not when there was some of these other wide receivers were on the board. I thought he was a guy that would have went in the late 20s, possibly Green Bay's second pick, Kansas City, that kind of a range. And they got him at 16th overall with I think Traylon Burks was still on the board there.
He was. He was the number 1 receiver on the board at the time.
Yeah. So I mean, Fedarian Mathis, I don't dislike that one. I think that's an okay pick. Sam Howell, we'll see. Like the other ones, I know we've said this a million times already. We just said it the last team. Sam Howell becomes the franchise quarterback for them. This is an A+.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime you can get a franchise quarterback in the draft, especially, at 144 overall, you win that draft. You'll take that draft 10 out of 10 times, regardless of how any of the other players turn out. Now, I really do like Cole Turner. I really do like Chris Paul. I thought those were 2 really, really good picks for them. But outside of that, man, there's not really a lot to like in this draft class. So I'm going to give this one. And plus, they traded that third rounder for Carson Wentz. And we've kind of all seen how that story's played out now, between the last Eagles season, the collapse last year in Indy. Now he's moving on to another team. I think it's pretty clear that he's just not that guy. As much as everybody wanted him to be, as much as he was in 2017, the injury, his refusal to take to coaching, to change the way he plays, to play smart, disciplined football, it's just not there. So for that happening, and with the reaches early on in the draft, as good as the value they got later on, I'm gonna give this a D+.
We have the same exact grade actually. And so I mean, if if you knew you wanted to take a receiver in the first round, instead of trading out of the pick, like just grab Chris Olave or Jameson Williams. Like they could have grabbed either one with their original pick, and instead they trade back a few picks and grab Jahan Dotson. I think there's a pretty decent gap between Jameson Williams and Jahan Dotson personally. So that was a head scratcher for me. Again, Brian Robinson, I like him as a player, but you just brought back J.D. McKissick. You stole him back from Buffalo. You've got Antonio Gibson, who is still on a rookie deal and a very talented running back.
Don't use.
Yeah, that you don't use enough. Sam Howell, of the quarterbacks that of the projected like top 5 quarterbacks, however you want to shake it out, he was my least favorite. But again, you got him in the 5th round, where a lot of, like, at that point in the draft, some people were saying like, "Hey, is this guy just going to go undrafted or what?" Like, it was worth a dart throw. But it's just like, yeah, I mean, this was a D to D plus draft for me. I didn't really understand a lot of what was going on. So yeah, I wasn't. No, I wasn't very shocked to not be too impressed with this draft class. So yeah, it sucks to close it out on a low note, but that's, it is what it is.
Yeah. So that takes care of all 32 teams. That was a very long show. So if you are still with us, thank you so much. If you just clicked to see your team, we do want to still say thank you, for listening as well.
Yeah.
You probably won't hear this unless you're a Washington fan. And at that point,
you've probably already clicked off because you've already clicked
off. But as soon as you saw a guy with a Colts head on, you were like, "Oh, he's just gonna shit on us for Carson Wentz." That's not true. I like Carson. He's a really good guy. I do. I hope he's successful. I really do. I really do hope he's successful. So yeah, if you're still listening, thank you so much. Make sure, like I said, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification where you can be notified. And if you're listening on any podcast format, go ahead and hit the subscription button as well. Go ahead and show support for us. If you're in the comments, go ahead, leave a comment. Let us know what we got wrong in your draft. Let us know if you didn't like it. Let us know if the Giants didn't need to take another pass rusher, even though they've taken 1 or 2 years in a row.
Still giving that guy a shout out.
I know, that's my guy right there. If he's still listening for whatever reason, that's my guy right there. And then if you liked your draft, go ahead and show us some support too. Yeah, kind of dunk the ball.
Spike that football, man. It's not gonna spike itself.
That's right, baby. So with that being said, now this is whenever the real work begins. Now we start getting into fantasy. We start getting into dynasty, daily fantasy plays. Some things to watch out for with Big Jared coming back on. And, pretty soon it'll be training camp time. We've got a little bit of a break here, kind of towards the end. There's a few things of mandatory camp still going on, but then we hit OTAs, we hit rookie mini camp, we hit training camp. And then as soon as you know it, preseason's right around the corner. So we're really excited. Football is kind of finally getting back in this. The draft was like the last thing before we start getting into the actual season. And we're right there at the tail, not the tail end, but there's light at the very beginning. Yeah, light at the end of the tunnel here. So thank you guys so much for supporting us. And we will see you here next week.